Chapter 1. Hidden Class Necromancer. The apocalypse is imminent. Please select your starting class. Class selection complete. Starting equipment will be rewarded. Please complete your selection within 30 seconds. Failure to choose will result in a random selection with no rewards. What is this? A screen just appeared in front of me. New technology? Choose a class? What the hell is this? And apocalypse? Laughable. Teacher, is this some special lesson now? Looks awesome. Zhan felt a splitting headache, listening to the cacophony of noise around him. What was going on? Wasn't he already dead? Was this hell? Just a moment ago, Zhan clearly remembered being swatted to death by that terrifying dire wolf king's claw. Before he died, he even saw his own bloody intestines. Holy crap, what is this? Suddenly, an exclamation broke through the din. A burly boy was holding an axe that shimmered with a cold light in his hand. Hey, Lu Ming, are you bringing an axe to class now? What are you planning? No. I just followed the prompts on the screen and chose the axe warrior class, and this axe just appeared out of thin air. Lu Ming quickly explained. Really? I'll try to. This is definitely not technology that exists today. Could the apocalypse really be happening? Better safe than sorry. Everyone choose quickly. Hearing the discussions, Zhan finally came to his senses, and a surge of wild joy erupted in his eyes. Rebirth. He had actually been reborn. Reborn to the very moment the apocalypse began. That's right. The apocalypse. Class selection. Starting equipment. It was all real. But this rebirth was a pain in the ass. It happened right when the class selection began, giving him no time to prepare. Without hesitating, Zhan looked at the class selection panel in front of him, which was exactly the same as in his previous life, with 3 choices. Powerhouse, Spirit Swordsman, Builder. In his previous life, Zhan had been skeptical and hesitated until the time ran out, directly resulting in a random selection of Spirit Swordsman. The Spirit Swordsman was actually a powerful class, with high attack and high agility and extremely powerful skills. Unfortunately, without a starting weapon, the Spirit Swordsman couldn't unleash any power. And at that time, Zhan was very timid and afraid to fight those monsters at all. The result was that he fell behind from the start and was always behind everyone else. In the apocalypse, he had always been a low-level figure, barely surviving for more than a year with caution and a little bit of luck. In the end, he was killed because of bad luck when a human powerhouse fought a lord, and the battle directly destroyed his hiding place. Since heaven had given him a chance to start over, would he still live like he did before? No, absolutely not. He would become a powerful individual, someone who could control his own destiny in the apocalypse, even become a human emperor. In his previous life, 8 incredibly powerful humans established 8 shelters to protect humanity. Those 8 were known as the 8 human emperors. Zhan didn't hesitate and was about to choose the Spirit Swordsman class. With a weapon, combined with his combat experience from his previous life, at least in the early stages, Zhan was confident that he could leave others far behind. However, just as he was about to choose, the panel suddenly changed, displaying a special prompt. Ding! Player detected to be reborn from death, triggering hidden class. Necromancer, select now? Hidden class. Zhan stood up excitedly, never expecting that his rebirth would actually trigger a hidden class. Without a doubt, hidden classes were much stronger than ordinary classes. 6 of the 8 human emperors were owners of hidden classes. But the triggering conditions for hidden classes were extremely harsh, with perhaps not even 1 out of 10,000 people able to activate one. Select. Although he had never heard of the Necromancer hidden class in his previous life, Zhan still chose without any hesitation. Ding! Congratulations on becoming a Necromancer, now issuing starting equipment, Ring of Necromancy. As the system panel disappeared, a black ring appeared on Zhan's finger. With a thought, an attribute panel reappeared in front of Zhan. That's right, the apocalypse had made this world like a game, with attributes, levels, and skills. Zhan. Level 1. Class Necromancer. Mana 50. Strength 4. Constitution 4. Intelligence 8. Agility 5. Spirit 7. Skills. Necromantic Reanimation LV1. Consumes 10 mana to reanimate corpses into undead creatures to fight for you. Reanimation quantity. 3. Quantity increases with player level. Cooldown 5 seconds. Equipment. Ring of Necromancy. Contains an undead space that can store undead creatures. Possesses the ability to repair undead. These stats. Zhan frowned slightly. His strength and constitution were too low, and he had no attack skills, which meant that he had virtually no combat power in the early stages. Now it all depended on how strong the undead creatures were. Hopefully, they wouldn't disappoint him. Just then, there was a loud bang. The door was forcefully pushed open by a huge force. Immediately afterward, an ugly, small monster rushed in, waving a small cleaver and baring its fangs. Holy crap! What is that thing? G-Goblin. There's a name above its head, W. What's going on? Hallucination. It must be a hallucination. At that moment, the classroom was in chaos. The monster in front of them had clearly exceeded their realm of understanding. Everyone, don't panic. Xiaming, the homeroom teacher, was relatively calm. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the goblin jumped up and landed directly on his head, using all 4 limbs to grip his skull tightly. Then, with a few bang, bang, bang sounds, the goblin's cleaver crazily chopped down. Brain matter mixed with blood splattered everywhere. Ah! Screams were inevitable. What the hell is that thing? The apocalypse. The apocalypse has really arrived. It's not a hallucination. I didn't even choose a class. I got randomly assigned a chef. Lu Ming, you have an axe, go. Kill it. Someone save us. Call the police, please. Signal. My phone has no signal. I can't make any calls. Zhan snorted. Call the police? Useless. With the arrival of the apocalypse, all signals disappeared, and all firearms lost their effectiveness. Humans could only use the most primitive methods to fight these otherworldly monsters. The psychological quality of the students in this class was too poor. None of them were reliable. In his previous life, besides his own good luck, these people had all died in the first wave of goblin attacks. Now, he could only rely on himself. Thinking of this, Zhan casually lifted a chair next to him. The next second, Zhan used all his strength to smash the chair to the side. With a bang, the chair hit the goblin directly on the head, sending it flying backward. As in his memories from his previous life, after killing the homeroom teacher, the goblin's next target was the class beauty, Zhangyu. This was the advantage of rebirth. Although goblins were the weakest otherworldly monsters, their agility was not low. If he really wanted to rely on his strength to capture their movements, it would be basically impossible with Zhan's current strength. While his mind was racing, Zhan's actions didn't stop. He followed up on the goblin flying backward and smashed it repeatedly on the head, until he was almost exhausted. Zhan finally heard the system prompt. Ding! Congratulations on killing a goblin, gaining 10 experience points and 10 gold coins. If you don't want to die, pick up the weapons in your hands and fight. In the apocalypse, the only person who can save you is yourself. Zhan said coldly, and at the same time, a faint green light flashed in his eyes. Necromantic Reanimation. Activate. Chapter 2. The only ones who can save you are yourselves. The students in the classroom never expected that the first one to stand up would be Zhan, who was usually as transparent as air. But seeing Zhan kill a monster so easily, the people who had been terrified were suddenly full of confidence and tightened their grips on their weapons. There were 35 students in the classroom, and 20 of them had starting class weapons. Zhan is right, be a damn man, and stop hiding behind us women. These monsters don't look that strong. Let's attack together. Everyone, don't be afraid. Just treat it like a game. Did you guys notice that we have skills too? Use your skills to kill these monsters. Maybe we can level up. Amidst the chaos, there was a loud bang. The back door of the classroom was pushed open directly, and 3 goblins jumped in. At the same time, 3 goblins rushed in from the front door. A total of 6 goblins waved their small cleavers and charged towards the students in the classroom. Ah! The axe warrior Lu Ming roared and launched the first attack, activating the skill Heavy Hammer against the goblin. But the axe smashed heavily on the ground. The goblin had already dodged nimbly, jumped up, and pounced on Lu Ming's head. Reality wasn't a game after all. There was no such thing as skill locking. In less than 3 seconds, Lu Ming, who had been so fierce just now, had been smashed into a bloody mess and died on the spot. Run. The group of students who had just gained confidence collapsed again and fled in all directions outside the classroom. Sure enough, the fate of being wiped out in his previous life hadn't changed because of him. Zhan sneered and ignored these guys. A goblin had already pounced on him. Zhan didn't panic and retreated slightly. The next second, a goblin suddenly jumped out from behind him, colliding head-on with the incoming goblin. It was the undead goblin he had just successfully reanimated. This goblin looked no different from before, but the aura it emitted was completely different. The most noticeable thing was its eyes, which were a bizarre shade of green. With a ding sound, the two cleavers collided. The goblin that had pounced was completely defeated and sent flying backward. Seeing this scene, Zhan felt a burst of joy in his heart. Worthy of being a hidden class. With a thought, the attributes of this undead goblin appeared in his eyes. Undead goblin. Trait: undead. Strength: 13. Constitution: 10. Agility: 18. Unlike Zhan, this guy had no intelligence or spirit. But even with just these three attributes, it was more than twice as high as Zhan's. Especially its agility, which was probably faster than the fastest humans before the apocalypse. Compared to ordinary goblins, it was obviously enhanced a lot. Number 1. Kill it. With a thought, the undead goblin charged at the goblin that had fallen to the ground, quickly taking it out. Number 1 was the name Zhan gave to the undead goblin, simple and easy to understand. Zhan immediately stepped forward and activated necromantic reanimation again. A moment later, Zhan had 2 undead goblins under his command. Looking around, 7 or 8 students had already died in a short period of time. Zhan felt nothing. If he had the ability in his previous life, he might have taken the initiative to protect these classmates. But having experienced the apocalypse once, he had already seen too much death and despair. He now had only one belief, and that was to become stronger. Constantly getting stronger. Number 1, number 2, kill the remaining 4 goblins. The next second, 2 goblins flashing with a faint green light charged towards their own kind. The 4 goblins were immersed in the pleasure of slaughtering humans and had no defense against their own kind. In addition, they had greatly increased in strength after being reanimated as undead. The system prompt rang continuously in Zhan's mind. Ding! Congratulations on killing a goblin, gaining 10 experience points and 10 gold coins. After 4 rings, all the goblins in the classroom had died, and 3 undead goblins followed behind Zhan. The 10 or so survivors in the classroom looked at Zhan with fear. Zhan, what's going on? Why can you control them? Class skills, don't you have them too? Zhan said coldly, not paying attention to the people as he prepared to walk out. Now was the early stage of the apocalypse. He had to kill goblins and level up as quickly as possible. This was just an appetizer. Without strength, even surviving would be painful. Just then, urgent voices suddenly came from behind. Zhan, where are you going? It's safer for us to stay here. Yeah, Zhan, you can't leave. You're so strong. You should stay and protect us. Zhan, please don't go. I don't want to die. Zhan, protect me. I'll have my dad give you 1 million. Zhan didn't stop, and he could only laugh in his heart. These people probably didn't understand the situation. Money? Money in the apocalypse was just a pile of waste paper, with the only use being wiping your ass. Zhan, take me with you. The class beauty, Zhang Yu, seeing that Zhan had no intention of stopping, gritted her teeth and quickly followed. In her opinion, Zhan had just saved her, so he would definitely protect her. As a result, as soon as she took 2 steps, the 3 green little monsters turned around and aimed their cleavers at her. Don't follow me, or don't blame me for being impolite, Zhan said coldly. In the apocalypse, a beautiful woman with no ability was a burden. He couldn't take her along. My final piece of advice to you is that in the apocalypse, no one can save you. The only ones who can save you are yourselves. Study your classes carefully. There are no useless classes, even the life classes can play a huge role. After Zhan finished speaking, he took the 3 undead goblins and walked directly out of the classroom. He wasn't talking nonsense. For example, a professional chef could make food that increased attributes. A builder could build a base that was immune to attacks from otherworldly monsters. A doctor could bring the dead back to life in the later stages. Many life classes were objects of contention for the major forces. Seeing Zhan leave, the class monitor, Zhou Kai, immediately scolded. He's going out to die on his own. Ignore him. Quick, quick, close all the doors, and we won't make any noise. Someone will definitely come to save us. Hearing this voice, Zhan shook his head. A group of hopeless guys. In the hallway, it was already in chaos. Everywhere were students fleeing and goblins chasing them. Of course, many students had also united and were fighting the goblins, but most of them were fighting and fleeing at the same time. Zhan ignored everyone and directly gave orders in his mind. Number 2, Number 3, go kill the goblins. Number 1, you protect me. After all, he was still pitifully weak and had to be careful. Number 2 and Number 3 moved quickly. In addition, it was always 2 against 1. They could kill a goblin in 10 seconds, an efficiency that was outrageously fast. Zhan was excited in his heart. At this rate, he would definitely be ahead of everyone else. Just then, next to him, a voice suddenly sounded. There's still one here, quick. Let's work together to kill him. Zhan followed the sound. He had some impression of these 3 people. They were upperclassmen. He frowned. The reputation of these 3 people in the school wasn't very good. They often caused rumors of campus bullying. The 3 came aggressively towards Number 1 with weapons, apparently treating Number 1 as a monster as well. Seniors, this is my class skill. I can control it. Zhan quickly stepped forward to stop the 3. At the same time, in his heart, he silently called back Number 2 and Number 3. Get out of the way. Wang Hong, the leader of the 3, acted as if he hadn't heard anything and pushed Zhan away. These 3 usually like to play games, and they adapted to this game like Apocalypse almost immediately. At this moment, the goblins were not ferocious monsters in their eyes, but gold coins and experience points. Chapter 3, Kill. Behind Wang Hong, Zhang Chang waved the staff in his hand, and after a moment, the ground under Number 1's feet instantly bulged, and the skill, Earth Binding, rooted Number 1 to the spot, preventing it from escaping. Zhang Chang's class was Earth Mage, which was very effective. Hee, my turn, Wang Hong said excitedly, raised the broadsword in his hand, and launched a heavy slash at Number 1. With this cooperation, they had already killed no less than 5 goblins. Very effective. The next second, a green figure suddenly rushed out from the side and slashed his arm with a fierce knife. It was Number 2 who had just arrived. Ah! Wang Hong screamed in pain, and the broadsword fell directly to the ground. His arm, though not broken, was still cut with a huge wound, with blood gushing like a spring. At the same time, the control time of Number 1's earthbinding had also ended. I said, they are controlled by me. Zhan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked at the 3, and said coldly. This push caused him to hit the wall, actually bleeding. This body was really weak. In front of him, 3 undead goblins raised the small cleaver, aimed at the 3 in front. You wait for me. Wang Hong covered his arm, sweating profusely, dropped a sentence and wanted to take his 2 younger brothers away quickly. The next second, a small cleaver had already smashed down on his head. Still want the next time? No chance. Zhan said with a sneer. In the Apocalypse, the enemy is not only monsters, but also other humans. Having experienced an apocalypse once, for the person who has already formed enemies, Zhan will not give him any chance of revenge. Ah! Wang Hong gave a scream. A head almost split in half, fell straight down, twitched a few times and completely lost his breath. The 2 younger brothers beside him had been completely frightened and even forgot to escape. When they reacted, 3 small cleavers had already chopped towards the top of their heads. Slaughter continues. After dealing with the 3 rubbishes, Zhan took a deep breath and ordered the 3 undeads. As the apocalypse continues, more and more people like Wang Hong will grab monsters, and there may be a situation where there are more monks and less meat. He must seize the time. 3 minutes later, when the 10th goblin was killed, the sound of upgrading finally rang in Zhan's mind. Ding! Congratulations on upgrading to level 2. Zhan's face was full of excitement. In his previous life, it took him 2 days after the apocalypse to reach the 2nd level. And now, only half an hour has passed. Looking at the attributes. There was no change in the attributes after the upgrade. Only 3 free attribute points were given. Most importantly, the number of necromantic reanimation increased to 5, which will greatly increase his overall strength. The hidden class is so terrifying. After thinking for a while, Zhan added all 3 points of attribute to physique. Generally speaking, the most important attribute for a mage is intelligence, which directly affects the damage of its skills. But Zhan is different. Although the Necromancer is also a mage, his main combat power is on the undead creatures, and the strength of the corpse that affects the strength of the undead creatures has nothing to do with intelligence. Then it's better to add physique. After all, the biggest shortcoming of the Necromancer is the mage himself. As soon as the 3 points of physique were added, Zhan felt a lot easier in his body, and the slight pain caused by that push disappeared completely. In addition to excitement, Zhan gave a perverted laugh at the 2 goblin corpses on the ground. Hee hee, get up, my undeads. A moment later, with 5 undead goblins, Zhan felt unprecedentedly powerful. At this moment, he suddenly found that the apocalypse didn't seem so terrible. There are 6 classrooms on the floor where Zhan is located. At this time, the students who could run have already run away, and the ones who couldn't run have died almost, and the entire corridor gradually became quiet. Just then, a dangerous aura suddenly approached, and a cold arrow shot straight from the staircase in front. Number 5, who had just completed the transformation, had almost no reaction and was hit by this ice arrow in the center of his eyebrows. Ding! Your undead has returned to eternity. Zhan was shocked. His undead goblin was killed directly. Who is the opponent? Turning his head, he saw a woman in a white dress holding a blue bow and arrow, preparing to shoot the second arrow. Wait, don't attack. These are my undeads, controlled by me. Zhan stopped the opponent at the same time, so as not to encounter a guy like Wang Hong again, quickly hid behind number 1. His heart was pounding. How could he not know this woman? The extremely beautiful face, the iconic elven ears, the superb archery skills. One of the future 8 human emperors, the elf queen Zhan Jialua. She was originally the school beauty of this school, and also the president of the archery club, with superb archery skills. Zhan knew that her class was also a hidden class, elven archer. For Zhan Jialua, it was just like a tiger adding wings. Zhan Jialua frowned. She had just killed the goblin, and she did not hear the sound of experience points and gold coins. Sorry. After apologizing, Zhan Jialua went to the next floor without hesitation. In her opinion, the classmate who can control goblins is obviously not weak. Since there is this person on this floor, she does not need to stay and grab monsters. That bitch. If I couldn't beat her. Seeing the opponent disappeared, Zhan breathed a sigh of relief, cursed in his heart, worthy of being one of the future 8 emperors. The moment that Bao pointed at him, it was like facing death. If there is a conflict, the opponent has the ability to kill him directly before the undead touches her. And there are 8 such strong people. Under the 8 emperors, there are 12 heavenly kings, 36 divine generals, and countless other strong people. Zhan's arrogant heart instantly converged. He only had a little advantage by rebirth. What qualifications does he have to be arrogant? If he doesn't want to repeat the mistakes of his previous life, he must work harder. Thinking of this, Zhan looked at another goblin corpse on the ground and activated undead transformation. The result was a ding sound. The system actually prompted him that his mana was insufficient. Damn! Zhan just remembered that there was also a mana setting and glanced at it. He now only had 9 mana. It should recover to 10 points in a few minutes. For almost enough. Zhan did not wait for the recovery of mana, heard the sound of tear from the classroom next to him, and pushed the door in. The scene inside made him feel chilly even after experiencing the apocalypse once. 5 goblins were pawing on the ground and were relishing and eating the corpses of the students. Humans are the food of these otherworldly monsters. The 5 goblins saw someone coming in and stopped eating, grinning and rushing over. Zhan took a few steps back and at the same time let the 4 undead goblins come forward. For against 5, quantity is at a disadvantage. But the final result was a complete victory for the undead. The difference in attributes, coupled with the fact that the undead have no pain and are tireless, even if they have a hand chopped off, they are as fierce as ever. It is simply the perfect fighting tool. In just 1 minute, 5 goblins had been hacked to death. Zhan's spirit finally recovered to 10 points, but after thinking for a while, he did not transform immediately. For undead goblins are enough to cope with the current situation. It's better to keep some mana for emergencies. Chapter 4. Goblin Decurion. After clearing the classroom, Zhan was about to walk out, but he felt a hand suddenly grab his ankle, and a weak voice came. Zhan, essay, save me? Zhang Yin. Zhan looked down at the person inside. This guy was one of the few friends he had in this school, but now, almost half his head had been smashed to pieces, barely holding on with his strong will to survive. In this situation, being alive would only increase the pain. The next second, undead number 1 raised his knife and helped Zhang Yin end his suffering. This was the only thing Zhan could do for him. Walking out of the classroom, the hallway had become quiet, with only the sounds of chewing coming from the classrooms. Controlling the 4 undeads, Zhan was preparing to enter the next classroom to continue harvesting. Suddenly, a commotion came from the stairwell, and the next second, a beautiful figure rushed over. It was Xinjialua, who had gone down earlier. The school beauty was disheveled and slightly panicked, and opened her mouth at the same time as she saw Zhan. There's a boss. How about we cooperate to kill it? As soon as she finished speaking, a goblin about 80 centimeters tall appeared at the stairwell. This goblin held a large cleaver in one hand and a shield in the other. Behind it followed 4 ordinary goblins. Not a boss, just an elite monster. Zhan glanced at her and said, this was the first time he had seen this school goddess so closely. Indeed, as rumored, she was an ice-cold beauty. According to the system's occasional prompts, humans in his previous life had compiled a large amount of monster data. These data were as important as survival manuals, and Zhan naturally remembered them by heart. Otherworld monsters were divided into 6 levels: Common, Elite, Champion, Commander, Lord, and Royal. This wasn't based on the monster's overall strength, but according to the monster's internal race. For example, the goblin race had ordinary goblins to royal goblins. The same went for dragons. And in terms of strength, an ordinary level dragon was enough to kill a royal goblin. The one in front of him was obviously an elite goblin. A goblin Decurion, elite monster? Xinjialua stopped beside Zhan and glanced curiously at the surrounding 4 goblins. In school, she was the high and aloof cold goddess of the archery club. But almost no one knew that she was also a powerful figure in online games, the president of a large guild, and the class was also a marksman. At the moment the apocalypse descended, she was also stunned and at a loss. At the same time, the system also prompted her to trigger the hidden class, Elven Archer. Xinjialua, who had played many online games, naturally knew what a hidden class represented and chose it almost without hesitation. After that, this world became like a game, with levels, attributes, skills, and so on. After the initial panic, Xinjialua quickly reacted. The hidden class of Elven Archer was like adding wings to her, an archery master. After killing the first goblin, the prompts for obtaining experience and gold coins rang, and she understood what it all meant. Kill monsters and level up. A familiar rule. That's right, elite monster, cooperation is fine, but you have to listen to my command. Zhan said, letting his 4 undead goblins form an offensive formation. At the same time, the information of the goblin Decurion quickly flashed in his mind. In his previous life, after human society gradually stabilized, they began to sort out various materials about the apocalypse and began to explore the reason for the outbreak of the apocalypse. Among these materials, there were naturally many about all kinds of monsters. And the data about goblins, the most numerous monsters, were readily available everywhere. Xinjialua frowned slightly, but still nodded and said, okay. Just then, the goblin Decurion suddenly raised his cleaver and slapped it on the shield in his hand, making an "ao ao ao" sound. As the sound rang out, the goblins who were originally eating in the classrooms rushed out, a total of 13 goblins attacking the 2. The goblin Decurion obviously knew that these 2 humans in front of him weren't easy to deal with, so he naturally had to let these minions consume them first. Clean up these little monsters first, Zhan said immediately. Number 1 took the lead, leaping up and giving a headshot to a goblin. Numbers 2, 3 and 4 also showed no weakness and attacked one after another. The hallway was only so wide after all. With the 4 undead goblins blocking in front, the goblins couldn't rush over at all. Seeing this, Shun Jialua didn't hesitate and started drawing her bow directly. The next second, a sharp arrow shimmering with icy aura appeared out of thin air on her bow, directly blowing the head of a pouncing goblin. This arrow could instantly kill even strengthened undead goblins, let alone ordinary ones. The characteristics of a marksman are high attack, and the first skill of the elven archer is to enchant the bow and arrow with ice attributes, making the damage even more ridiculous. As long as it hits the vital point, it will definitely kill. Even if it hits other places, it can slow down the opponent for a certain period of time. This was also Shun Jialua's confidence in being able to kill monsters alone earlier. Just as this goblin was blown away, Shun Jialua had already condensed the second arrow in her hand. Next, Shun Jialua stood on the spot, constantly shooting ice arrows. As an archery master, shooting moving targets was a compulsory course. In addition, with no one disturbing and the distance being close, Shun Jialua's arrows were almost certain to hit. Good guy. My 4 undeads can't kill as fast as she can alone. Zhan was shocked. Of course. The biggest credit for the other party being able to kill so easily was that the 4 undead goblins were blocking in front. In terms of the strength of the hidden class alone, Zhan believed that the Necromancer wouldn't be weaker than the elven archer. In just 3 minutes, under the strong output of Shun Jialua, all 13 goblins had been killed. Zhan was a little unhappy. Most of the experience was taken away by the other party's strong output. Shun Jialua didn't stop and shot another arrow, heading towards the Goblin Decurion over there. The Goblin Decurion didn't panic at all, waving the broadsword, and accurately cut off the ice arrow in an instant. At the same time, it roared, "Ao, Ao, Ao" again. The 4 goblins around it shone with red light, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. This is the Goblin Decurion's frenzy skill, which can increase the attributes of nearby goblins for 1 minute. Zhan reminded solemnly. The Goblin Decurion's own attributes weren't very high, only about 3 times that of ordinary goblins, but this frenzy skill was very troublesome, and this was also the reason why he agreed to cooperate in killing it. Otherwise, he would definitely choose to swallow the elite goblin alone. Is that so? Shun Jialua pondered. She was a smart person, and naturally wouldn't ask Zhan why he knew this information. Ao, 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 Ao. The Goblin Decurion roared again, and rushed up with 4 enhanced minions. The speed was twice that of ordinary goblins. Chapter 5. Reward Magic Box. My undeads won't be able to block for long. Kill one of the ordinary goblins beside it as soon as possible, and leave the rest to me. Zhan said quickly. At the same time, the 1 to 4 undeads have already killed the goblin that has been coming back. The enhanced goblin's attributes were even better than the undead goblins. As soon as the 2 teams came into contact, the 4 undeads were somewhat unable to hold on. Shun Jialua did not speak. She has been keeping the posture of drawing a bow, but did not shoot. The Goblin Decurion hasn't moved yet. If she shoots directly, she is afraid that she will be shot down again. She must wait for the opportunity. Just then, there was a poof sound. Most of the body of the undead goblin was cut off by the other party, and the goblin chief seized the opportunity, raised a knife and dropped it, directly cut off the head of the undead 3. Drop, your undead has returned to eternity. The prompt sounded in Zhan's mind. Before he could feel sorry, he felt an energy erupt from his side. It was Shun Jialua, who shot an arrow while the Goblin Decurion was swinging the knife. This arrow did not shoot at the Goblin Decurion, but at an ordinary goblin beside it. Since she had chosen to listen to Zhan's command, then she would not have any hesitation. Without the Goblin Decurion's blocking, this arrow naturally accurately hit the head of a fighting goblin. However, the strengthened goblin was not killed by this arrow. But the next second, the first undead has already jumped up and slashed at its neck, accurately filling the knife. Good job. Hearing the system's killing sound, Zhan did not hesitate to praise his little brother. I don't know if it was an illusion, but the first one always felt much smarter than the other 3 undeads. Then, he immediately took a few steps forward, and when the distance was enough, the faint green light lit up directly in his eyes. Undead transformation. Start. The goblin who had just died hadn't even fallen down yet, and a mysterious power was injected into its body. At the same time as the green light appeared in his eyes, he suddenly turned around and slashed at the former boss, the Goblin Decurion. Even if the Tin Captain were smarter, he couldn't have imagined that the little brother in the previous second would turn around and slash himself in the next second. The new fourth goblin directly hit the Tin Captain in the stomach, and the green liquid rushed out. It works. Seeing the success, Zhan was also excited. This is his plan, the unique sneak attack method of the Necromancer. Without Zhan's reminder, Shunjialua, who seized the opportunity, had already shot another arrow. The Tin Captain, who had just been cut, naturally had no way to prevent it, and another little brother was hit in the head. The first one, who was waiting for the opportunity, was like a human head radar, and once again went out to kill it. "Get up, my undead." Zhan did not hesitate and used the remaining 10 points of mana to perform undead transformation. The dead goblin instantly transformed into number 5. Zhan did not let it sneak attack the goblin chief, but first helped the second and third solve the remaining 2 goblins. The form instantly reversed. The original 4-on-5 turned into 5 undead goblins against the Goblin Decurion. This is the terror of the Necromancer. After a battle, the undead is getting more and more, enough to make all enemies despair. At the same time as being shocked, Shunjialua's movements on the side were also non-stop, shooting arrow after arrow at the Goblin Decurion. The Tin Captain's frenzy skill can only be effective on the little brother. With the little brother gone, the combat power suddenly decreased by more than half, and he was hung with a few more arrows to slow down. Soon he was cut back by the 5 undeads. Half a minute later, it was number 1 again. "Take your time." Leaping up, he stabbed a knife towards the face of the Tin Captain and directly pierced through its eyes, piercing through its head. "Drop, attack you to kill the elite goblin, Goblin Decurion, get 100 experience points and 40 gold coins. Drop, congratulations on reaching level 3. 2 consecutive voices sounded, and the joy on Zhan's face could not be suppressed. In the last apocalypse, he was hiding, living a very humble life. But now, he reached the 3rd level so quickly. Without hesitation, he still added these 3 attributes to his physique. Then, he couldn't wait to look at the skill undead transformation. Certainly, the maximum quantity has become 7. Next to, a smile also appeared on Shunjialua's face. She also upgraded. But soon, she saw that something seemed to appear on the corpse of the Tin Chiefs, so she glanced at Zhan and said, "It seems like equipment was dropped?" Zhan naturally saw those things, nodded and said, let's go take a look." The end of the world made many things in this world gamified, so it is natural to kill monsters and drop equipment. Zhan let the 5 undeads walk between the 2, and at the same time issued an order. Once Shunjialua had the action of bending his bow, he would attack without hesitation. Although the 2 had just fought side by side, the human heart is unpredictable. If Shunjialua suddenly went berserk for the sake of equipment, with her powerful lethality, she might be able to kill Zhan directly. Fortunately, until he walked to the side of the corpse, Shunjialua had no intention of attacking. 2 spheres are floating on the Tin Commander's corpse at this moment. "One for each of us. I want this one." Zhan took a look and took one of the spheres without hesitation and said. His heart was ecstatic. At this time, he would not be polite because the other party was a beauty, and naturally he would take whichever one was good. Shunjialua frowned, but didn't say anything. She took the other sphere and looked at it carefully. Only then did he see that there was a pair of rather delicate green shoes inside the sphere. "Just squeeze the sphere hard and break it." While speaking, Zhan squeezed the sphere in his hand and made a demonstration. With a bang, a burst of energy flew out of the sphere and directly entered Zhan's body. At the same time, the system's voice rang in his mind. "Please select the reward type. Attribute points, experience points, skills, equipment." It really is a reward magic box. This is a good thing. In his previous life, Zhan survived for more than a year and only got one. Reward magic box, as the name suggests, is an uncertain reward, and you need to rely on luck to draw it. For example, if you choose an attribute point, which attribute and value are all random. The experience value is also random. Zhan once heard that a very lucky man randomly obtained a huge amount of experience and directly rose by 50 levels. Certainly, This probability is ridiculously small, even less than 1 in 10,000. Someone once did a statistic. The person who chooses the property, 90% of the probability is below 5 points. 9% probability is 5 to 10 points or more. Only 1% of the probability is above 10 points. The experience value is about the same. So unless it is the true son of luck, almost no one will choose these two. Most of them choose skills and pretending. Chapter 6. Undead Sacrifice. Lu Zhan's luck wasn't bad. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to survive for more than a year in his previous life. But if you talk about the son of luck or something, that's still 108,000 miles away. So he naturally couldn't gamble on his luck, but obediently chose the skill reward. Although the end of the world gave everyone initial classes and initial skills, but subsequent skills cannot be obtained through upgrades. Instead, you need to rely on skill books to learn. There are many ways to produce skill books, but there are very few for hidden classes. This is also one of the biggest drawbacks of hidden classes. Skills are hard to find, and the reward magic box can be said to be a treasure that hidden classes are vying for. Because if you choose a skill at random, no matter what skill you get, it will be related to your class. Drop, select the skill reward, start randomizing. After choosing, the system's voice rang in Lu Zhan's mind. After a full 5 seconds, drop, congratulations on getting the skill Undead Sacrifice. Drop, congratulations on meeting the skill requirements of Undead Sacrifice. Do you want to learn it immediately? Hearing these two voices, Lu Zhan was overjoyed. Skills are not obtained and can be learned. There will be various requirements such as level and attributes. If he draws a skill that can only be learned at level 50, then it's really too late to cry. Fortunately, heaven is still kind to him. Learn immediately. Lu Zhan moved his mind and looked at the skill description. Undead Sacrifice. Consumes 5 mana to sacrifice an undead creature to another undead creature to strengthen it. Note: sacrifice may fail. Cooldown: 5 seconds. Lu Zhan frowned. This is also undead strengthening, but it requires an undead creature as a strengthening material. But it's a bit painful that it will fail, which means wasting an undead creature in vain. It is also not explained how strong the strengthening is. Lu Zhan didn't show any expression on his face. With Shun Jialua there, he naturally couldn't test it on the spot. It is not easy to hide the hidden occupation. After all, you will know when you release the skill, and the others must be hidden. Apocalypse. Monsters are enemies, but sometimes, humans themselves are the biggest enemies. After Shun Jialua broke the sphere, a pair of delicate green shoes appeared in her hands. When Lu Zhan saw the appearance of the shoes, the attributes of the shoes appeared in his mind. Goblin Jumper Shoes. Agility +3, jump height increased by 10%. The levels of equipment are divided into 7 levels: white, green, blue, purple, red, black, and gold. The whiteboard has only 1 attribute, while the green equipment has 2 attributes. These Goblin Jumper Shoes are a relatively spicy green equipment. However, in the early stage, 3 points of agility is equivalent to 1 level, which can be called a magical weapon. It's just that the color is too conspicuous. Shun Jialua didn't care, and directly put on these coquettish shoes. There is no size distinction for this type of wearing equipment. As long as you put it on, it will automatically change to the appropriate size. Not bad. Shun Jialua took 2 steps and said with satisfaction, then looked at Lu Zhan with burning eyes. The meaning was obvious. What good stuff did you get? Why don't you take it out and show it off? Lu Zhan's expression remained unchanged, and he cupped his hands and said, "Then, see you later." It is indeed much safer to team up with Shun Jialua, but with one more person to share the experience, the efficiency will be much lower. Moreover, the Necromancer class is a team by himself. It's more refreshing to be a loner. Shun Jialua raised her eyebrows. To be honest, she originally wanted to take the initiative to team up with Lu Zhan. After all, with the undead blocking in front, she only needed to shoot arrows in the back, and fighting would be too easy. I didn't expect this guy to want to part ways with him. Although she doesn't care about any false names or appearances, she is very clear about her charm. Since childhood, which of those men didn't want to approach her in every possible way? But if that's the case, she can't force herself to come over, and said cheerfully, "Okay, then there will be a future." After speaking, Shun Jialua jumped directly from the 3rd floor and landed firmly on the ground. Lu Zhan didn't mean to be surprised at all. The agility of the elven archer is not low, and with the newly acquired shoes, jumping on the third floor is nothing. Before leaving, Shan Jialua looked back and found that the boy didn't even look at herself, and a sense of disobedience rose in her heart. Lu Zhan naturally didn't know what the other party was thinking. Even if he knew, he wouldn't have any indication. Love is something that only the strong are worthy of having. He is not qualified yet. After the other party completely disappeared, Lu Zhan couldn't wait to try to suppress the undead sacrifice. As a result, he was prompted that his mana was insufficient, and he was suddenly upset. It's really troublesome. Do you want to add some mental attributes? Mental attributes will affect the mana upper limit and the recovery speed of mana, which can be said to be the second most important attribute for magic-type classes. After thinking for a while, Lu Zhan suddenly thought of something and walked towards the stairs without stopping. The goblins on this floor have been cleaned up. Shan Jialua had just cleaned up the second floor as well. There are still a dozen or so goblins eating on the first floor. As for the students, they had already run away, and the rest had turned into corpses. This huge teaching building was still full of laughter not long ago, and the sound of reading was loud. But now, there is only Lu Zhan alive. Looking at the corpses and broken limbs all over the ground, Lu Zhan couldn't help clenching his fists. He doesn't want to become a member of this group of people, and he doesn't want to repeat the mistakes of his previous life. Strength. He needs strength. Only by constantly getting stronger can we survive in this apocalypse. Then, Lu Zhan's eyes released a firm look. My undeads, go and kill these goblins. 5 minutes later, Number 1 slashed down and directly cut off the head of the last goblin. Lu Zhan looked at Number 1. This guy is a bit interesting. Number 1 is about the same as the other undeads in terms of attributes, but Number 1's combat awareness seems to be much stronger. There were several attacks that even Lu Zhan was surprised. Objectively speaking, even in his previous life, he might not be able to capture those attacking opportunities so accurately. The vending machine, if I remember correctly, should be over there. According to the location in his memory, Lu Zhan quickly found a vending machine in the corner on the first floor. This thing used to sell some drinks and snacks. But after the end of the world, earth-shaking changes have taken place. Lu Zhan pressed his hand on the top of the machine, and soon, a very crisp female voice came. Welcome to use the exchange system. At the same time, a virtual store interface appeared in front of his eyes. That's right. This is something similar to a store in the game. The gold coins dropped after killing those monsters are used here. The entire store is divided into 3 categories: skills, equipment, props. Lu Zhan first clicked on the skill interface and was immediately disappointed. Sure enough, there are all those cheap low-level class skills. He can learn a few magic ones, but they are useless at all, and learning them is a waste of skill points. As for equipment, there are also some whiteboard equipment, not even as good as Goblin's jumper shoes, and they are ridiculously expensive. Sighing, Lu Zhan opened the item interface. Chapter 7. Elite Undead. The item interface was a dazzling array of things. Besides special items similar to those in games, you could also buy everyday items here, such as food, clothing, and even sanitary napkins, condoms, and dolls. This apocalypse was completely different from the apocalypses in those online novels. You didn't need to worry about things like food and medicine at all. As long as you had gold coins, the store would provide you with the best supplies. Lu Zhan, of course, wouldn't spend his precious gold coins to exchange for these things now. He directly entered the words mana into the search box. Soon, only a few items remained on the interface. Beginner mana potion, intermediate mana potion, mana spring, mana recovery scroll. He naturally couldn't afford the advanced ones, and he didn't need them now at all. Lu Zhan now had a full 300 gold coins. Without hesitation, he directly clicked on beginner mana potion. This thing was 50 gold coins a bottle, and a bottle could restore 50 mana. Lu Zhan directly exchanged 5 bottles, leaving only 50 gold coins. Exiting the store system, Lu Zhan couldn't wait to look at Number 1. This guy was obviously more worthy of cultivation than the other undeads, so he naturally had to be the target of strengthening. Lu Zhan silently chanted the skill Undead Sacrifice in his mind, and the one to be sacrificed was Undead Number 2. Soon, the entire body of the Undead Number 2 next to him burned up, turning into a gray mist, which merged into Number 1's body. Ding! Congratulations, your sacrifice was successful. Hearing the sound, Zhan quickly looked at number one's attributes. But after seeing it, he immediately cursed. After sacrificing an undead, the most increased attribute, agility, was only 3 points. Strength and constitution were only 1 point. Everything else was unchanged. I really don't believe it. Zhan looked at the goblin corpses all over the ground and the mana potion in his hand, and became ruthless. Number 3, sacrifice yourself. A moment later. Ding. I'm sorry, the sacrifice failed. Damn. Number 4, go. Ding. Congratulations, your sacrifice was successful. Number 5, continue. Dedicate your life. Next. Zhan was constantly releasing undead reanimation and undead sacrifice. If he ran out of mana, he drank a beginner mana potion. This stuff tasted cold and sweet, and the taste was not bad. This stuff was a must-have for mage-type classes, but there was a big flaw. There was a 5-minute cooldown after drinking a bottle, and there was no chance to drink a second bottle in some high-intensity battles. But Zhan wasn't in a hurry, he would just wait for 5 minutes. Finally, after drinking 3 bottles of mana potion and sacrificing nearly 20 undeads, the system rang 2 sounds in a row. Ding, congratulations, your sacrifice was successful. Ding, congratulations, your undead has successfully evolved. Zhan was overjoyed and looked at number 1. He saw a burst of green light suddenly burst out from his body. The goblin's body didn't change much. That is, it grew from 50 centimeters to about 60 centimeters, but the aura it emitted was completely different. Zhan couldn't wait to open the attributes of this little thing. Undead Goblin. Trait: Elite Undead. Strength: 32. Constitution: 28. Agility: 40. Skills: Death Fear LV1. Passive skill: the death aura exuding from the whole body makes the enemy feel fear, and the attributes decrease by 10%. Damn, it's not in vain for all the undead I wasted. Zhan couldn't help but cursed again, and excitedly picked up number 1 and was about to kiss it, but finally, forget it, it's too ugly. I can't bring myself to do it. Zhan put number 1 back on the ground. Elite. In the early stage of the apocalypse, Elite was equivalent to a mini-boss-like existence. What's more, number 1's skills were also ridiculous. This little guy, except for being a little ugly, was perfect everywhere, and Zhan liked it more and more. Suddenly, he thought of something, and quickly took number 1 to climb up to the 3rd floor. The corpse of the goblin Decurion was still lying there gradually, motionless. Zhan moved his mind. Number 1 threw the small cleaver in his hand on the ground, and then took the large cleaver from the goblin Decurion's hand, waved it, and felt quite comfortable. Sure enough. Zhan nodded with satisfaction. Although this knife didn't have any special attributes, it was much more exciting to cut with a big one than with a small one. Then, Zhan looked at the corpse of the goblin Decurion. His eyes flashed green, and unsurprisingly, the system's voice rang in his mind. Ding, undead transformation failed. Zhan wasn't disappointed either. He had thought about this result for a long time, but he just wanted to try it with a fluke mentality. It was just a pity to waste 10 points of mana in vain. Then, he reanimated 6 undead goblins again, including number 1, a full 7 undead goblins. The power of the Necromancer has already begun to show. Zhan moved his mind. The ring of necromancy in his hand flashed a trace of green light, and the 6 undead goblins had disappeared in place, entering the undead space. Only number 1, the elite undead, remained by his side. It was too flashy to bring 7 goblins. With the current situation, number 1 alone was enough to cope with most situations, so it's better to hide the other 6 as trump cards first. Let's go, the hunt continues. Leaving the teaching building, Zhan wasn't interested in looking for those goblins that were alone to kill. The efficiency was too slow. In his memory, there were 2 places in the whole university that gathered a large number of goblins, because these 2 places were the hiding places of the students. In the first few days of the apocalypse, except for a few daring and extremely powerful people who dared to take the initiative to hunt monsters, most people were still mainly fleeing. After all, everyone was just ordinary students before, and they would tremble even when killing a chicken. The ferocious appearance of the monsters was enough to scare away most people, let alone go forward to fight. One place was the dormitory building, which can be said to be the students' home. and there were a large number of supplies, enough to hide for a long time. The other place was the canteen building. When the apocalypse broke out, most people thought about supplies. The canteen building not only had various foods, but also had a large supermarket on the first floor, which was definitely a great place to take refuge. Zhan in his previous life followed everyone and hid in the canteen building. According to Zhan's memory, the current canteen building should be surrounded by a large number of goblins, at least 200 or 300. It would be courting death for him to go there rashly now. It was safer to go to the dormitory building to kill monsters. With a decision, Zhan took number 1 and went towards the dormitory area. There are 3 dormitory buildings in the dormitory area of Nanlin University, standing side by side. They belong to teachers, males and females respectively. At this moment, there were bursts of screams from the 3 dormitory buildings from time to time. The students hiding in the dormitory were found, killed, and eaten by the goblins one by one. Some people could not bear this fear and jumped directly from the building to end their lives. Certainly, there are also brave people killing goblins. Zhan is one of them. He used to be a physical education teacher at this university. When the end of the world broke out, he happened to be resting in the dormitory. When choosing a class at the beginning, he also took the attitude of rather believe it or not, and took the initiative to choose one of the classes. Ghost Swordsman. Then a 2-handed greatsword appeared in his hand. Chapter 8. Berserker. Soon, he discovered that the Ghost Swordsman class seemed to be stronger than other classes, and after successfully killing the first goblin, he also realized that this had become a game-like world. However, the drawbacks of the Ghost Swordsman are also great. That is, the agility is too low. He can only deal with 1 goblin at a time, and once there are more than 2, he has to run away. So all along, he has been carefully looking for a goblin that is alone to kill. Until now, he has killed nearly 20 goblins and leveled up to level 2. At this moment, he was on the 2nd floor of the girls' dormitory. After just killing a goblin, he said to the girls hiding inside, "Hide inside, don't make any noise. I will try to kill the monsters on this floor." Inside the dormitory, 2 girls hid under the bed, shaking. Zhan closed the door and walked into another dormitory, which was empty. Just as he was about to go out, suddenly, a drop of water dripped on top of his head. Zhan looked up and saw a goblin hanging on the chandelier on the roof, drooling at him. The next second, the goblin screamed and pounced down. Damn! Zhan was startled and quickly raised the 2-handed giant sword, but it was too late, and the goblin directly hugged his entire face. With a loud ding sound, Zhan couldn't hold the giant sword anymore, threw it on the ground, and grabbed the goblin with both hands, trying to tear it off his face. However, the goblin hugged his head tightly and had no intention of letting go. In a panic, Zhan's body swayed from side to side and unconsciously walked directly to the window. Seeing nothing, Zhan exerted his strength and the whole person turned out of the window. The goblin was also very clever and directly released Zhan's head in the air and steadily landed on the ground by using his agility. Zhan was not so lucky. With a loud bang, he fell heavily on the ground, feeling a burst of pain in his body. Fortunately, after choosing the class, his body seemed to have been specially strengthened, otherwise he would be disabled if he did not die from this fall. Suppressing the pain, Zhan quickly stood up, but secretly said that it was not good. His 2-handed giant sword was left upstairs, but the misfortune didn't end there. The movement from the fall was too loud, which has attracted the attention of many goblins upstairs, and they jumped down from the window one after another. After a while, including the previous one, a total of 7 goblins surrounded Zhan. It seems that good luck has come to an end. Zhan smiled bitterly. Even if he had a weapon, he couldn't beat 7 of them. Iya, iya. The 7 goblins screamed and rushed up, and they couldn't eat if they ran slowly. Zhan roared and also rushed up. Even if he died, he would die standing up instead of waiting for death in vain. However, just at this moment, a green figure suddenly shone out from behind Zhan, so fast that it formed afterimages. With a poof sound, Zhan hadn't even reacted yet. The head of the goblin closest to him flew directly off its neck and fell on the ground. The green liquid sprayed on his face in an instant. Fortunately, this thing is not poisonous, otherwise Zhan's handsome face would be ruined. Next, Zhan only saw a figure shuttle between the remaining 6 goblins, and there was a sound of meat cutting. In less than 30 seconds, all 7 goblins were separated from each other, with no survivors. And the one who killed them was also a goblin. The goblin was holding a big cleaver, and was a little bigger than the other goblins, turned around, and a faint green light appeared in his eyes. It is number 1. Today's number 1 is not only much stronger than these goblins in terms of attributes, but also has a powerful aura to weaken the enemy. Under the ebb and flow, killing goblins is as easy as chopping melons and vegetables. At this moment, Lu Yong only felt a chill and didn't feel any joy of being saved. "Teacher Lu, are you okay?" Suddenly, a voice rang behind Lu Yong. Lu Yong was startled, turned his head and saw that it was his student Lu Zhan. "Be careful, don't come over." Lu Yong almost subconsciously stood in front of Lu Zhan. "Run away quickly. This guy is very powerful. I will hold him back." A warmth could not help but rise in Lu Zhan's heart. Humanity is complicated. In his previous life, Lu Zhan had seen too much of the ugliness of humanity. But there is also a beautiful side, although the ratio of good is pitifully low. Although Lu Yong is Lu Zhan's physical education teacher, there is not much interaction between the two. They only said a few words in class. At this moment, Lu Yong was able to stand up fearlessly and protect his students with his life, worthy of the title of teacher. Lu Zhan didn't say anything, and with a thought, number 1 had put away the cleaver and walked over. It was not until the terrifying goblins silently walked behind Lu Zhan that Lu Yong came back to his senses and said incredulously, You. Teacher Lu, my class is more special and can control these monsters." Lu Zhan said with a smile. "Damn, Beast Master?" Lu Yong couldn't help but cursed. Lu Zhan naturally didn't deny it. "Lu Zhan, you thing, so strong, just brushed and killed all 7 goblins." Lu Yong, who had survived the disaster, also had a lot to say. Although he was a teacher, he was only 32 years old and still young. "Good luck, just fine." Lu Zhan didn't have time to chat with him and said directly, "Teacher Lu, let's cooperate." "Cooperate? How to cooperate?" Lu Yong was stunned. In his opinion, Lu Zhan's little brother is so strong that he doesn't need him at all. "Just like just now, you lure the goblins down, and then I will kill them," Lu Zhan said. This was also what he had just thought of. Instead of going upstairs to find goblins to kill in one dormitory after another, it was better to let the goblins take the initiative to come out. As the lowest level monsters, goblins have a certain IQ, but it is obviously not very high, only a little stronger than instinct. If Lu Yong lures monsters here, the goblins will definitely rush down to grab food, but not too many, not more than 10. Because there is only 1 person, and a dozen will obviously not be enough to share. The goblins still have this common sense. As long as there are no more than 10, there will be no danger for number 1. There is another point, that is, he wants to help Lu Yong. After being baptized by a round of the apocalypse, Lu Zhan believes that he is not a good person, but he still hopes that there will be more good people in this world. Although Lu Yong is not a game fan, he has played a lot when he was in college, and he naturally knows the routine of attracting monsters and killing monsters. He said directly without hesitation, "Haha, your idea is good." His idea is very simple, attracting all the monsters, and the students hiding upstairs will naturally be safe. Lu Zhan smiled and asked casually, "By the way, Teacher Lu, what is your class?" "Ghost Swordsman." Hearing these 3 words, Lu Zhan was shocked. Ghost Swordsman is not a hidden class. It is only a little stronger than other classes. But after level 10, the Ghost Swordsman can transfer to Berserker, which can be said to be the ceiling of ordinary classes, extremely powerful, even not inferior to most hidden classes. In the impression, one of the 12 heavenly kings is a Berserker. Unexpectedly, Lu Yong's class is a Ghost Swordsman, but he has never heard of this name in his previous life. Perhaps his original fate should have been to die in the Goblin Siege just now, and his arrival completely changed his destiny. Chapter 9. Undead Monarch's Favor. Then I'll start shouting now? The goblins should come down when they hear it, right? Lu Yong didn't know how powerful his Ghost Swordsman would be in the future, and asked, "Wait, where is your weapon?" "It's up on the floor." "Then you pick up a goblin's cleaver first, make do with it, and you can fully output Teacher Lu and get more experience," Lu Zhan said with a smile. "Okay, thank you, Lu Zhan." Lu Yong was not pretentious. Although he used to be a teacher, But in today's apocalypse, the social order has collapsed, and whoever is stronger is naturally the boss. Lu Yong can see it openly. Then, Lu Zhan took number 1 and hid in the nearby grove. Damn you ugly little trash. If you have the ability, get down and kill me. Downstairs in the dormitory building, Lu Yong roared and cursed out the words hidden in his heart. That's a pleasure. After scolding, Lu Yong raised his head and saw goblins looking out from the windows and was startled. Wouldn't they all jump down? Fortunately, he still has some reason to believe. After 8 goblins jumped down, the other goblins returned to the dormitory to find other food. Damn, come over if you have the guts. With a backer, Lu Yong was full of confidence, holding a knife in one hand and hooking his fingers at the 8 goblins. Iya. Although goblins can't understand human language, they can understand this universal gesture, and they rushed up. Before they could get close, number 1 had rushed out again, slashed a goblin in half, and kicked it to Lu Yong in the back. This was naturally Lu Zhan's order. The last knife that kills the monsters accounts for a large proportion of the entire experience distribution rule, and he also hopes that Lu Yong can get more experience. Hee, watch me cut with one knife, go slash. Lu Yong smiled. A man in his 30s was still a bit chinibu. Then a black aura condensed on the cleaver in his hand and slashed forward fiercely. The goblin that was about to die was directly taken away, and the system's voice also rang in Lu Yong's mind. Although this experience is not as much as his individual kill, the efficiency is high, and most importantly, it is safe. Lu Zhan sent Lu Yong 4 kills for 8 goblins, and the others were naturally taken by the goblins. In this process, Lu Zhan didn't even have to show his face. Then I continue? Lu Yong muttered to himself excitedly. Just for a while, it was equivalent to him killing 2 goblins. So cool. Lu Zhan asked the goblin to nod, and then went back to hide. Useless little waste. Come on if you can. The IQ of the goblins obviously didn't understand why the 8 companions who just jumped down turned into corpses. They can only follow the instincts in their bones, which is to eat people. Therefore, 6 goblins jumped down again. 1 minute later, when number 1 finished dealing with the 3rd goblin, besides the experience points, Lu Zhan also heard other voices in his mind. Drop, congratulations on completing the achievement of killing 100 monsters and obtaining the title of 100 Monster Slay. Drop, congratulations on being the 96th player in the world to complete this achievement. Being one of the top 100 players will receive a special reward, class talent. Do you want to draw talents? Lu Zhan was shocked and showed ecstasy in his eyes. He knew the title of 100 Monster Slay, and there were even 1,000 Monster Slay, 10,000 Monster Slay. It is a basic title that everyone can get. As for the title attribute, Strength +1, is optional. But he really didn't know about the top 100 rewards. In his previous life, he was just a small person struggling at the bottom, and he could be said to know nothing about many advanced information. At this moment, Lu Zhan was only rejoicing that he had chosen to cooperate with Lu Yong and killed 100 in time. If he went to find them in the dormitories, he might not be so fast. If it were any later, he would definitely fall out of the 100th place, and there would be no reward. But a trace of vigilance also rose in Lu Zhan's heart. 96. That is to say, there are still 95 strong people in front of him. Although he has the advantage of rebirth, he can't be too careless. With an excited mood, Lu Zhan directly responded in his heart. Draw class talents. He also never heard of class talents in his previous life. This extremely rare thing is obviously used as a trump card, and anyone with a little IQ would not publicize it. Class talent is being drawn. Drop, congratulations on drawing the SSS level talent, Undead Monarch's Blessing. At this moment, the smile on Lu Zhan's face almost twisted into a chrysanthemum. Although he hadn't heard of this thing, does he need to doubt the gold content of SSS level? In this life, it's finally my turn to be the protagonist. The next second, Lu Zhan's whole body shook, only to feel a powerful force suddenly filled his body. He could feel that his strength, physique, and agility had been greatly improved. He couldn't wait to open the attributes immediately. Under the class Necromancer, the class talent, Undead Monarch's Blessing is impressively displayed. And below this talent, there are only 2 simple descriptions, but they are extremely heaven-defying. Blessed by the Undead Monarch, all reanimated undead are strengthened by 10% of the attributes. Blessed by the undead monarch, all reanimated undead gain 10% of the attributes. Zhan took a deep breath, and only one thought remained in his heart. I am going to be invincible. The first point goes without saying, increasing the strength of all undeads by 10%. For an ordinary goblin, it may only be a few points of attributes. But as more and more undeads increase in strength, this increase will be quite terrifying. The most critical is the second point. Let's say agility. An ordinary undead goblin provides about 1.8 attributes, and 6 is 10.8. In addition to the 4 points of this elite undead, he is equal to 15 points of agility out of thin air. If someone thinks that the body of the Necromancer is weak in the future, then he will understand what is called a melee mage. This attribute is definitely much stronger than most warrior-type class. The only problem is that it cannot use skills. Ahead, Zhan has started the third hate pulling. Soon, 7 goblins jumped down one after another. When Zhan felt that it was less, suddenly, the ground shook slightly. An enlarged version of the goblin jumped down heavily. It was the goblin Decurion. This guy is an elite monster after all, with a little higher IQ than his little brothers. He found that his little brothers couldn't solve this little human after so long, so he decided to solve it himself. Zhan's face changed, and he naturally saw that this big guy was not simple, but he did not retreat. He had already made up his mind. If Zhan can beat it, that is of course the best. If he can't beat it, then he will stay behind. Number 1. Give you 2 younger brothers, can you solve it? A flash of light flashed in Zhan's eyes, and he silently recited in his heart. The magical thing is that number 1 seemed to understand, and actually nodded. Damn, just because you are big, I am afraid of you? Zhan clenched the cleaver in his hand, using words to embolden himself. The next second, that familiar green figure has appeared in front of him. The difference is that this time he actually brought 2 younger brothers. Zhan was stunned, and immediately reacted. The student he once had behind him may be even more powerful than he thought. Iya. The goblin Decurion did not take action in the first time, but screamed at number 1, seemingly denouncing these 3 goblin traitors. Number 1 did not speak, but directly used action to answer, and saw it leaping up, slashing the sword at the 10. Iya. The 10 captains were also completely angry, yelled, and also raised the knife to meet the enemy. It's going to personally teach this rebellious boy a lesson. The result was a ding sound. The 2 great captains collided and broke the 10 captain's great sword. His face was even greener. It can't understand why a goblin is not as strong as smaller goblins. For this result, Zhan was not surprised. Everyone is an elite level, and number 1 has a 10% attribute increase. Coupled with a 10% attribute reduction to the enemy, the attribute can be said to be completely suppressed by the captains. Ayo. Seeing that the single fight could not be beat, the goblin captain directly abandoned talking about martial ethics, released the skill fever. The 7 goblins around him were instantly pumped with blood and rushed towards number 1. However, number 1 was not fighting alone. In addition to the 2 undead younger brothers, Zhan was also unwilling to be a coward and rushed up. Number 1 originally planned to rush forward and directly cut off the goblin 10, but suddenly received an order from the owner. Kill those ordinary goblins first. The next second, number 1 rose the knife and drop. What is fever? What to strengthen? In front of number 1, it is a knife matter. In just 10 seconds, all 7 fever goblins have been cut off by number 1. Zhan was instantly numb, and just made preparations for desperate work, but wasted a wave of blood in vain. Chapter 10. Card Bug. Ayo. The goblin Decurion shouted again when he saw his little brothers dead. Before long, the goblins on the dormitory building jumped down one after another. This is also why Zhan did not let number 1 kill 10. Letting this 10 cap shake the person is much more effective than Zhan provoking below. Seeing that a goblin brother jumped down, the 10 cap suddenly became temperamental and yelled even harder. However, its fever has not reached its duration. This time, it is just dry shout. And if the fevered goblins can't stop one goblin, these unheated goblins are even more vulnerable. A few of them didn't even land, and were cut by one in the air. The leaked ones were also hacked to death by the 2 and the Lu. As for Zhan, only have the part of picking up the leak. In just 3 minutes, the voices of Zhan's brains have not stopped, so that he is a little worried that he will crash. 3 minutes later, the voice of the goblin Decurion began to dum, holding the half-section short knife shivering. Even if it was shouting again, there was no goblin jump down. It's not that the goblins in these 3 dormitories have died. It's just that it's just an elite level, and some goblins that are eating won't give it face. So, 1 walked in front, 2, 3, and Lu Yong followed behind, moving step by step towards the 110. The goblin kept on retreating, retreat till in a wall, retreat with no way, actually kneel down to begging. These monsters are not game data, but real life. Naturally, they will be afraid. Those ordinary goblins are not afraid of death. Just because their brains are too simple, the instinct has passed everything. Lu Zhan moved his mind. 1 not to be polite, rose a blade and dropped, chopped 3 blades enough. After 3 swords, they stopped and didn't continue, because Lu Zhan ordered it to leave a drop of blood for the other side. Then, 1 looked towards Lu Yong. Lu Yong immediately understand. This is to let him have the head. Just killed so many goblins, he naturally understand that taking the head will be assigned more experience. Never thought that Lu Zhan wanted to give the boss's kill experience to him. Inside the heart, don't have to say how much moved. With tears, Lu Yong held up the cleaver, released the skill Ghost Slash. With a ding, he upgraded to 3 levels. At the same time, Lu Zhan, who has been operating behind the scenes, also came out and walked to the next to 10. Just now, his minds have sounded the sound of an level. It's 4 levels now. It's still 3 properties. It's still physique. Also, it can generate 2 more undead. Lu Zhan, thank you. Lu Yong said seriously. If there is no Lu Zhan, he estimated that it would take at least 1 day to level up to 3. A greater possibility is to be killed by the goblins. It's nothing, Teacher Lu. The ghost warrior is very strong. I hope that the future world can have a share of your brilliance. Lu Zhan said with a smile. Some words made Lu Yong cloud in the mist. Lu Zhan didn't take care of him anymore, but looked at this tin, the things that blew the storm. This is also why he let Lu Yong come to the biggest reason. Monster Explosion also has certain rules, such as the weak to kill powerful monsters have a greater chance of getting good things. In the previous life, many powerful teams to kill boss would bring a weak chicken, is to let the weak chicken to the boss to this last strike. The card is a reasonable bug. Lu Zhan had been lucky to have been a chicken for 1 to 2 back. At the moment, 2 balls are floating on the corpse of this tin. Lu Zhan glanced at some disappointed. There is no reward magic box. 2 ball, 1 inside a stone, and the other is a symbol, to be exact, a character, the word technique. Lu Zhan first took the stone, and he naturally knew this thing, strengthen the stone, can be used to strengthen the equipment. Then, he squeezed the character ball. Drop, congratulations on getting a skill point +1. That's right. This thing is a skill point. The so-called end of the world game. Leveling up will only bring enhanced properties and other skills, skill points, equipment, etc. all have to be obtained by other methods. So the level does not represent absolute strength. Low-level kill the high-level example is common. When heat, level is also very important. In addition to the properties, many advanced equipment and skills have level requirements. This point of skill points, Lu Zhan directly added to the undead regeneration. Then moved to mind. The mind sounded the sound of the system. Drop, strengthen the ring of reincarnation. Consume 100 gold. Whether to strengthen? The role of gold is not only to buy items in the system store, but it is everywhere. It said that this is strengthened to more than 10. Each time it needs tens of thousands of gold. Once it fails, it is bloodless. The more powerful, the greater the demand for gold. Without hesitation, Lu Zhan directly chose yes. Drop, congratulations on the success. The starting equipment given by this system, although it is a whiteboard, has a very special characteristic, that is, there is no upper limit for strengthening, and even if the strengthening fails, the equipment will not be damaged. In the previous life, a top strong person had nothing to do, and spent a lot of strengthening stone and gold to strengthen the starting equipment to 99. At that moment, the properties of the starting equipment has been less than a golden god. A more terrible thing is that it can continue to strengthen, although the success rate has been scary low. This made countless people who lost their equipment at the beginning of the stage regret it. Lu Zhan's reincarnation had a reincarnation space, so he could not give up this equipment at all. If so, it might as well strengthen it to try. Done all this, Lu Zhan opened the properties. Lu Zhan, level 4. Profession, undead master. Mana, 60. Strength, 16. Physique, 22. Intelligence, 8. Agility, 20. Spirit, 7. Skill. Undead transition LV2. Consume 10 points of magic. The corpse will be reincarnated into the undead creatures to fight for you. The number of rebirth, 3. The number of the number will increase with the level of player upgrade. Equipment. Rebirth ring +1. Magic power +10. Contains a reclusive space that takes the undead creatures into it, with a good repair undead. This property made Zhan some speechless. The magic, intelligence, and spirit of the masters are ridiculously low. As for the strengthening of the ring of reincarnation, to strengthen indispensable magic +10. That's right, Zhan. Do I need to continue to attract monsters? At this time, Lu Yong asked. As for the 2 balls that Zhan took away just now, although he was curious, he would not ask, because that was Zhan's thing. No need, Teacher Lu. I have to go to other places. Are you going with me? Zhan shook his head and made a rare invitation. The Ghost Warrior's combat power is very strong. If possible, it will be an extremely strong teammate. Most of the goblins in the dormitory have been killed, and it is not necessary to waste time. Hearing this, Lu Yong frowned and said, "But there are still a lot of goblins in this dorm, Zhan. You are so strong. Why don't you help these classmates and kill the goblins?" Teacher Lu, don't you understand? In this apocalypse, it is they who can save them. Kill those monsters, and then keep getting stronger. That's the way to survive in this apocalypse. You killed all the monsters, so how do they get stronger? It's not like you have to protect these people for life. Zhan said expressionlessly. Chapter 11. Instance Dungeon. As a result, after listening to these words, Lu Yong's brows gradually relaxed and said, Zhan, thank you. I know how to help them now. What you mean is, I shouldn't just kill those goblins. It won't save those students. But should teach them how to fight, teach them to kill those goblins themselves. Although he knew that following Zhan would have countless benefits, but he still decided to stay and save the students hiding in the dormitory building. Teaching and educating people is not exactly what he, as a teacher, has to do. Zhan was dumbfounded. This is not just a good person. It is simply a holy mother personality. Teacher Lu, I remember there is a vending machine in the dormitory building. You can go and see. Maybe you can find something good. Zhan said. Lu Yong nodded and said with a solemn expression, Zhan, I hope to see you again in the future. He is also a wise man, knowing that it is not realistic to force Zhan to stay and help. After speaking, he couldn't wait to run back to the dormitory building. At this time is life, and he had to get his two-handed great sword back first. Small knives are not very handy to use. When Lu Yong left, Zhan looked at the Goblin Decurian's corpse on the ground, his eyes flashing green. The second level of the undead transition should be able to transition the elite level. A moment later, sure enough, as he expected, the Goblin Decurian suddenly opened his eyes, showing the undead's iconic green light. The transition was successful. Zhan glanced at his attributes, secretly said it was a pity. Undead Goblin Decurian. Features: Undead. Strength: 26. Physique: 22. Agility: 30. His most anticipated frenzy skill is gone. And it's just a normal level of the undead. The attribute is a lot lower than 1. It seems that no matter what level of monsters, after being transformed into the undead, they are all beginning from the normal level of the undead. However, although they are all normal level, the 10 attributes is much stronger than the normal goblins. Under the influence of talent, it provides Zhan with 2 or 3 properties. There is one more undead, and Zhan did not waste it on ordinary goblins. Instead, return to the teaching building. There is a Goblin Decurian lying there. 10 minutes later, in the teaching building on the 3rd floor, as the 10 who were lying on the ground stood up again, Zhan felt that his 3 major attributes were strengthened again. There are 9 undead. If the other 8 are sacrificed into the elite undead, how powerful would he be? Thinking about it is exciting. Then, the matter of killing monsters can be slowed down first. The experience value gap from the 4th to the 5th level is huge, and there is not much improvement after upgrading. The immediate priority is to improve their strength. If I remember correctly, the first copy of this school is about to open. Although this copy is only a one-time copy, for now, the reward of the customs clearance can be described as inverse sky. Zhan must take it. The end of the world is like a world to humanity. But God still gave people a chance to breathe, in addition to this gamification. The biggest welfare is the copies. The copies are large and small, and even the existence of time. The timing of the emergence of all has no rules. But there is no doubt that it is. The appearance of the copies represents huge resources and benefits. A lot of experience, top-quality equipment, all kinds of items, all from the copy production. In the previous life, each of the 8 human race masters controlled at least one permanent large copy. Then, start a boring journey of undead sacrifice. Just killed a large number of goblins. His current gold has 1080. Came to the vending machine. Zhan directly exchanged a full 20 magic potions. This thing does not know if it will get drunk. Then, use the skill of undead sacrifice. The second undead is sacrificed to the newly reincarnated 8th, which is the undead Captain 10. If possible, he naturally wants to sacrifice these 2 heads to become elite first. Then, the attribute upgrade is afraid to be huge. Drop, I'm sorry, the sacrifice failed. The third continue. Drop, I'm sorry, the sacrifice failed. 2 consecutive failures, Zhan sighed. This is not his luck, but for the 10 ordinary goblins this sacrifice is too weak. Then, he tried to strengthen one. The result directly prompted that the undead sacrifice level is insufficient. If so, only strengthen ordinary goblins first. Zhan's side of rebirth of the undead. While the sacrifice of the undead, the magic of the fall of the general drink. After sacrificing a full 20+, the second elite undead was finally born. Drop, congratulations on the success. Drop, congratulations on your evolution success. Undead Goblin. Features, Elite Undead. Strength, 28. Physique, 25. Agility, 34. Seeing this property, Zhan frowned. This is also an elite. The attribute gap with one is a bit big. The main thing is that there is no skill. With a puzzled heart, Zhan continued to sacrifice. Soon, the third elite level undead was born. The attributes are similar to the second, and also without skills. Most importantly, he did not feel that spiritual feeling in these 2 elite undead. Zhan looked at one. I found that it was also looking at myself with green eyes. This further indicates that one situation is special, is a mutated individual. More than an hour later, 20 magic potions were all drunk by him, and the goblins of this whole teaching building was also consumed. Zhan finally succeeded in strengthening all 6 ordinary goblin undead to the elite level. That is to say, 7 elite level undead, plus 2 10-level normal undead. Zhan's 3 attributes were broken 30, physique and agility was 40, and he is just a 4-level magic profession, which can be described as ridiculously. After put all the undead in the space, Zhan looked again in various rooms, finally in the hands of a classmate found a sword weapon. The initial equipment belongs to the binding equipment. Other people cannot get any equipment properties, cannot be strengthened. However, this sword as the basic function of the weapon is still there, is also sharp. Zhan picked up and waved a bit. It is quite handy. His job in the previous life was also a sword, and naturally he was very familiar with the sword. Although there is no sword skills, but with his current properties, the sword power is also extraordinary. Pretend to be a sword professional, and afraid no one can see it. Do all the preparations. Zhan set off to the location where the copy was opened, the cafeteria building. He could not grasp the accurate time of the appearance of the copy, naturally to go over and make preparations as early as possible. That's right. The entrance to the first copy is in the building. In my memory, Zhan and a large number of students hiding in the cafeteria hall, surrounded by a large number of goblins. At the beginning of the copy opening, everyone did not know what it was. But in that no choice, no matter what, everyone held a glimmer of hope to try it. So one after another into it. After entering, I found that the inside of the copy is more dangerous, but once you enter, unless you pass, you cannot withdraw. As a result, so a total of hundreds of people entered the copy, spent a full 3+ hours, relying on the stacking of human life to force the customs clearance. And the final beneficiary is a student who was originally insignificant. It is relying on the huge income of this copy of the first pass. This student can directly take off, and eventually become one of the 72 generals. Chapter 12. Cafeteria Building. The cafeteria is divided into 3 floors. The first floor is a large supermarket, and the second floor is the cafeteria. As for the third floor, it is the box. Although Zhan was prepared, but when he really saw this scene, the heart was still extremely shocked. Once, he was hiding in the second floor hall. The outside of the situation is not particularly clear, only know that there are many goblins. At this moment, he saw clearly. There are at least 300 of the dense, afraid. What's even more frightening is that there are nearly 10 tall goblin decurions scattered everywhere among these goblins. And the one standing in the center, wearing green armor and holding a battle axe. That is the goblin warrior-level monster. Such a powerful force, in fact, is a piece of cake to break into the cafeteria. Zhan vaguely guessed that these monsters siege and not attack, because what they want is not just to slaughter humans, but want to keep humans as a pig. But the upper limit of the goblin species is too low. Even the warrior level, there is not too high wisdom. It only knows to bring people around here, not let anyone run away, and then wait for the commander to come. Previous life. Zhan had strayed into the territory of the demon wolf tribe by mistake, where there was a special place where a large number of humans were kept. There, even death is a luxury. That hellish scene deeply stimulated Zhan's nerves. Take a deep breath, brush away the terrible scene in his mind. So many goblins, even if he, hard hit, will die without a doubt. Fortunately, he also did not intend to hard hit. Zhan around this cafeteria, a large circle, came to the rear of this cafeteria. Here the goblins are much less, but the hard rushing movement is still too big. His goal is a big tree here. The tree is lush and green, said to have been hundreds of years of history, up to 15 meters, higher than a whole building. Next to the tree, 2 goblins are eating human limbs picked up from somewhere. Zhan slowly approached, and when the distance was enough, he exploded, and in an instant he was in front of the 2 goblins. This swipe, 2 swords down. The 2 goblins had separated, and only a very slight sound was made during this process, which did not attract the attention of the goblin army. Then, Zhan jumped, and had jumped to the 2-meter-high trunk. Nearly 40 agility is enough to describe as light, with the ancient saying, that is light effort. After jumping again twice, Zhan has reached 10 meters of this tree, just to see the roof of the cafeteria. The distance is nearly 10 meters. In the case of no sprint, normal humans cannot jump out. But now, is he still considered a normal person? Zhan self-ridiculed, walked to the tree trunk closest to the roof, and honestly said that he had no idea. Anyway, even if he didn't jump over, falling down would not fall to death. There is nothing to be afraid of. Take a deep breath. Zhan jumped hard. The next second, his body is like a cannonball, shooting out. After a while, the feet just stepped on the edge of the roof. The world record has been broken. Zhan self-teased said. The roof leads down a door. Zhan pushed it, found can't push. It seems that it should be blocked. Zhan is not ambiguous. Directly pick up the sword, swipe a few times. The door will be broken into a rare. Sure enough, behind the door is a big pile of tables and chairs. Zhan was about to enter with violence, and saw a few people running up the stairs, said with a shocked face. You? Who are you? How can you be here? The sound of breaking the door is not small. They are to investigate the situation. Originally thought that it was a goblin. Did not expect it was a person. Before blocking the door, they had seen it long ago. The roof is impossible to have people. Zhan pointed to the big tree and said truthfully. Jumped over from that tree. Brother, you are awesome. Come in quickly. The headed man was holding a spear in his hand and giving a thumbs up said, did not feel incredible. Commanded the others to move the tables and chairs. Now the world everyone has a job. The incredible things are too much. Long jumping at 10 meters or something is not so shocked. Moreover, Zhan's appearance and dress is a student from this university. Hello, my name is Zhou, a senior. When Zhan came in, Zhou saw the sword with green blood in the other's hand, and suddenly became enthusiastic. It has been half a day since the end of the world broke out, and the people have roughly understood the basic rules of this end of the world. That is to kill monsters and upgrade. Can understand, but how many are really courageous? The Zhan in front of him is obviously a batch with courage. The Lu Zhan in front of him is obviously a batch with courage. The Lu Zhan in front of him is obviously a batch with courage. Just said that he is Zhou Kai, is also fortunately killed 3 goblins. This is so a few younger brothers are willing to follow. My name is Lu Zhan, a sophomore. Lu Zhan also reached out and said, at the beginning of the apocalypse, most of humanity still retains the nature. The good side has not completely disappeared. As the apocalypse is carried out, human morality will be greatly impacted, so that for a period of time, morality is completely corrupted and humans fall into an incredibly dark age. Until the 8 appeared, they established a new social order. Brother Lu, have you killed a lot of goblins? Zhou Kai, while letting the younger brothers reblock the door, while chatting. Just killed a dozen of them by chance. Fuck. Awesome. A dozen. Upgraded? Upgraded. 2 levels. But it's useless. Just added 3 properties. That is also very strong, Brother Lu. Are you a sword warrior? No. It's a sword warrior. Sword. Awesome. This name sounds unusual. No wonder you can jump so far. Good luck. Hee hee. Good luck is also a kind of strength, Brother Lu. If there is a chance to go out, bring the brothers to kill the monsters. Yes, Brother Lu, take me with you. My job is a doctor. The skill can add blood. Brother Lu, also take me with you. And me, Brother Lu. For a time, 5 or 6 students spoke together. Good to say. Lu Zhan said with a smile. His heart is quite strange. Once, he has played the role of Zhou Kai countless times. Never thought that now, the role has been reversed, and he has become the object of pursuit. Speaking, a few people have come to the cafeteria hall on the 2nd floor. Here are crowded with people. Most people are sitting on the ground. Only a few have chairs to sit on. These people's faces were covered with despair and fear. Seeing Zhou Kai and others down, there was not reaction. The arrogant, the powerful are enjoying in the boxes on the 3rd floor and will not squeeze with these people here. A small cafeteria has begun to show the social class. It's just that this class is not divided according to the wealth status, but the strength. There are even many rich people in this hall, but now, their money has become a number or paper. Although these people don't know what's going on outside, but after so long, there is still no one to save them, they can guess what is going on. All this is no different from the previous life. Come, Brother Lu, go here. I will let them give up a seat. Zhou Kai's calling has inadvertently changed from Brother Lu to Lu. Although he is not qualified to enter the box on the 3rd floor, he is strong in this hall. No need. I want to go get something to eat first. Lu Zhan said, and walked towards the supermarket downstairs. Chapter 13, Too Weak. Zhou Kai's face changed slightly, and he stepped forward to block it and said, Lu, Brother Lu, you can't go to the supermarket on the 1st floor. Lu Zhan, but as if did not hear. Footsteps are not stopped. Why can't go to the 1st floor? He is clear. At the stairs, lying a few corpses, is the former wanted to force the entry of the 1st floor of the end. Lu Zhan turned a blind eye, crossed these corpses and went down. Zhou Kai bit his teeth, and with a few younger brothers also followed. Yo, there are people who dare to come down to find death? Don't want to die. Roll back, Brother Han said. We'll send a batch of food up in a while. We'll have a special wait. On the 1st floor of the staircase, guarding 2 big, wearing security uniforms, each holding weapons. The weapons have some red blood, obviously not the goblins come. However, their words have just started, and feel that the eyes of the flower. The next second, these 2 people want to speak again, only to find that they have been unable to make a sound, the throat where blood spurts out. Lu Zhan stepped back a few steps, saving to be splashed by blood. The occupied this 1st floor supermarket is the school of few security guards. These people are who? He is too clear. The previous life in this cafeteria did not know how many people were killed. There is a count one all are not good things. Lu Zhan moved hand naturally is not hand, but soft. And after killing these 2 people, his minds also sounded the sound of the system. Drop, kill the player, get 20 gold coins. Drop, kill the player, get 30 gold coins. Killing does not have experience, but you can have the other party's gold. You can also pull the other side's equipment, props. But these 2 people are too poor. Killed is also white kill. After, Zhou Kai and a few younger brothers have completely scared silly, looking at Lu Zhan with a frightened face, dared not come near. Although the end of the world to now, they have also seen a lot of killing scenes, but also did not have this clean, unprincipled The main thing is too fast. Faster they did not even see how Zhan was. The guy in front of you really just a student of great level? Hee hee, bring you to a $0 purchase? Zhan turned back and smiled said. Brother Liu, you first please. Zhou stuttered said, unconsciously has been used to your. That smile in his eyes is the devil's smile. Zhan stepped down the stairs with an expressionless face, crossing the two corpses. Not far away. There have been a few people rushing in this direction. Among the people, the leader is the former security captain, named Han Yong. Different from the surrounding younger brothers with knives and sticks, this guy's hand but with a gun. Because the job he has chosen is a gunman. The end of the world erupted, the reality of those heat weapons all lost the role, naturally including guns and the like. But this Han Yong's hands of the gun is not the same, belongs to the system reward of the initial equipment, not only can be used, and the damage is not vulgar, the most terrible is unlimited bullets. The gunman in the initial stage of the apocalypse is simply bug-like occupations. Grass mud horse. Fine death. Han Yong saw the two little brothers who had died. Rage not resist. As a result, his words had just begun, and a figure had approached him extremely quickly. Han Yong was shocked, just to raise his hand, and felt as if something was going to fall on the ground. A closer look, only to find that it was his hand with a gun. Ah! Han Yong's mind was blank. After a full 5 seconds to react, issued a scream. Within 7 steps, it is said that the sword is fast. Zhan, quite pretending to say, said, then a sword directly cut through the other side's throat. Drop, kill the player, get 200 gold coins. This guy is quite rich, killing the goblins. You, who are you? Forgiveness, boss for a life. The surrounding few younger brothers completely panicked, did not expect that they are considered to be the strong security captain died so, where there is a strong power of the courage. Forgiveness. Forgiving you is killing other people. Zhan coldly snorted, hands merciless. These people, he remembered clearly, not only killed many students, but also dragged the good-looking students in the hall down to arbitrarily insult, heinous. Although these sins they have not committed this life, but it does not prevent Zhan from them to trial. 1 minute later, Zhan will wipe the sword with the corpses on the ground, will erase the blood, to the back followed by Zhou and other people said, well, you are free, but you. The result Zhou but Putong a sound directly knelt on the ground, with a warm face said, Brother Liu, in the future you are my big brother, I am your cow. To now, he does not understand. The eyes in the face of what little legs, obviously is super rough legs. His brothers also followed suit. Zhan, but as if did not hear, straight towards the supermarket drink area to go, only left 5 words. You are too weak. Zhan have hands, not what aristocratic master, do not need what younger brothers. Even if you look for teammates, you will find Xinjialua, Liu Yong that level, it is naturally impossible to bring Zhou. Too weak. Zhou eyes without God. Weak even the qualifications of being a younger brother. Previous insults are flashing one by one in his mind. He has to always like that? Don't. He does not serve. He has to get stronger, to dominate his destiny. At this moment, an unprecedented determination filled his heart. Drop, congratulations on the awakening of the professional talent, the more war and more courageous. Zhan naturally did not know that because of their own words will let Zhou wake up professional talents. At this time he is drinking Red Tiger energy drink, eating canned meat, a good meal of satisfied. Although the end of the world points can be exchanged for food, but like him so the bottom people get points is not easy, naturally used to change things to enhance the strength, whereas willing to spend on eating and drinking. This life, at least no need to let their stomach suffer. Eat and drink enough. Zhan patted his hand and went to the 2nd floor. And Zhou and others are still taking the bag to prepare a little more material. Seeing Zhan, induction greeted and asked, Brother Liu, need us to guard the staircase? Keep it for dry? This, if they are casually taken, they will be consumed for about 1 to 2 days. Hee hee, you are also going to stay here for 1 to 2 days? Then, waiting to die? Really want to live, just go out to kill the strange upgrade. That is the real way of survival. Speak. Zhan turned his head and walked on the stairs. 2nd floor hall. Zhan just on the floor, heard a scream from upstairs. Then, A ragged female rushed out of the boxes and then directly used the dagger in the hand to stab the heart. In the box, a few people walked out without paying attention to looking at the female woman. It's really bad luck. There are so many women. I am not playing with you. Hee, death is not without playing. Fuck. You do not evil hearts, a little thrown to the floor, to the inside to continue to play. Speak. One person will have been dead female lifted, directly thrown from upstairs. The death ash of the hall face. What did not say? Just let the place out. With a bang. The body of the female falls on the ground, unmanned close. Although the end of the world has been only half the time, but for these people, as if over a few years so long. In this half a day, they have witnessed too much death, too much evil, too much humanity. This cafeteria, the people who killed in each other is as many as dozens of people. Those people have been thrown to the floor, fed the goblins. Now these people have been some numb. Chapter 14. Avenge Your Own Wrath. Zhan glanced at the female student's face, a pang of emotion tugging at his heart. He knew that face well. It was Zhang, the former class beauty. He turned down her advances back then, never expecting she'd meet her end here. He glanced at the private room upstairs, finding it rather amusing. It was precisely where the dungeon was about to appear. Such a confluence of coincidences. Could it be that Zhang Yu's spirit wanted him to avenge her death? But, he thought, since it's about revenge, you should take care of it yourself. He then murmured silently in his mind, "Number 7, my apologies, but I'll have to sacrifice you." Inside the undead space, Number 7, freshly strengthened into an elite undead, began to dissipate. It transformed into a wisp of mist, entering the body of the squad leader undead. Ding! Congratulations on a successful sacrifice. Sacrificing an elite-level undead had only increased the squad leader's stats by 2 or 3 points. This was a terribly unfavorable exchange. But Zhan was only doing it to free up an undead slot. Zhan looked at Zhang Yu's corpse on the ground, his eyes glowing with an eerie green light. Honestly, this was the first time he was attempting to reanimate a human. He didn't even know if it would work. Holy crap. Ayaha. Just then, 2 students who were preparing to carry the corpse out and throw it downstairs screamed in terror. The corpse was slowly standing up, the dagger still embedded in her chest. Who wouldn't panic at such a sight? Resurrection? What are you freaking out about? This is a game world now. A zombie is nothing surprising. Could she be some kind of hidden class? Look at her eyes, they've turned green. Is she going to turn into a zombie? Zhang Yu, do you recognize me? This bizarre scene finally stirred a ripple in the stifling atmosphere. A large group of people surrounded the resurrected Zhang Yu, but no one dared approach. The next second, Zhang Yu finally took a step forward, sending the crowd scrambling backward in fright. However, she seemed to not notice anyone. She walked straight towards the stairs. In that moment, an answer dawned on everyone's minds. Zhang Yu was resurrected for revenge? Zhan, oblivious to the crowd, followed Zhang Yu up the stairs. Zhang Yu, a newly reanimated undead, had even weaker combat power than that goblin. Going for revenge alone would only result in her being killed a second time. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Zhang Yu finally reached the door of the private room. She raised her hand and knocked. What the hell? Who is it? A curse immediately echoed from inside the room. Then, the door opened. The next second, Zhang Yu raised the dagger in her hand and stabbed ferociously. The person opening the door never expected such a turn of events. With no defense whatsoever, he was stabbed directly in the chest. Thankfully, it wasn't the heart. He wasn't instantly killed. You bitch, goddamn you. The man was surprisingly tough. He didn't even scream. Instead, he clutched his chest and viciously kicked at Zhang Yu. But before his foot could touch Zhang Yu, a flash of sword light cut through the air. The foot fell straight to the ground. His entire leg had been severed. Ayaha! This time, a scream finally erupted. Zhang Yu then raised the dagger again. Once, twice, 3 times. The dagger stabbed repeatedly into the man's body. Zhang Yu didn't stop even after he was dead. There were 9 people in the private room at this point, 5 men and 4 women. The 4 women were all shapely and beautiful. They were the class beauties that everyone had chased after. But now, In order to survive, they had been reduced to playthings. The group stared in astonishment at the eerie scene. What the hell? Wasn't she dead just now? Ghost? There's a ghost? Ghost my ass. Even if it's a ghost, I can still chop it up. Zhang Hong, the leader of the group, was not only strong but also incredibly courageous. He picked up a large blade from the side and charged forward. With a swoosh, he struck Zhang Yu on the shoulder. But Zhang Yu didn't even utter a sound. She grabbed the blade embedded in her shoulder with one hand and stabbed straight at Zhang Hong with the other. Her face wore an almost imperceptible, eerie smile, and her eyes glowed green. It was a truly terrifying sight. Ayaha! Several girls screamed in the private room. Damn it, shut up. Zhang Hong slapped one of the girls in the face. At the same time, he picked up an axe from the ground and viciously swung it at Zhang Yu's neck. He refused to believe that this thing would still be able to move if its head was chopped off. But the next second, there was a clang, and a sword blocked the axe, preventing it from moving an inch. It's you. Anger flashed in Zhang Hong's eyes. He couldn't possibly forget the guy who almost chopped off his arm, but fear quickly followed the anger, because he realized that he hadn't even seen how the guy had made his move. There was only one possibility. That person's strength was far beyond his imagination. That's right, it's me, Lu Zhan said calmly. Then, his hand moved and Zhang Hong's hand left his arm. With an average agility of only 10 at this point, his 40 agility was an anomaly. He didn't need any combat skills, because the enemies simply didn't have time to react. Ayaha! Everyone, attack! Quick! Everyone attack and kill! Kill him! Blood spurted wildly from Zhang Hong's arm as he screamed madly. He was afraid. He didn't want to die. The apocalypse was his time to dominate. How could he die now? You four, get out. Lu Zhan ignored him completely. He pointed at the four girls and said. The four girls didn't dare linger after hearing this. They rushed straight out. One of the boys also tried to escape, but as soon as he reached the door, a flash of sword light severed both of his legs from his body. On the other side, a boy mustered his courage to cast a spell, only to find that both of his hands had fallen to the ground. Lu Zhan, carrying his sword, walked leisurely. Each swing of his sword took away a limb, either a hand or a foot. In less than half a minute, the 5 people in the private room had lost both hands and both feet. Only their torsos remained, lying on the ground unable to move. They weren't dead. They were still clinging to life, but they had lost too much blood and didn't even have the strength to scream. Was it cruel? Lu Zhan felt nothing. He had seen things that were far crueler. Next, it's up to you, Lu Zhan said to Zhang Yu, who was standing to the side. He walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. Chapter 15. Dungeon activated. Lu Zhan stood in the hallway, looking at the crowd in the lobby. The 4 girls had naturally already told everyone what had just happened. On top of that, Zhou Kai's underlings had spread the news of what had happened in the supermarket downstairs. The eyes of the people looking at Lu Zhan now were filled with fear. Compared to Wang Hong and the security guards, Lu Zhan seemed more like a bloodthirsty demon. Wang Hong and his men only wanted people to obey and fear them. As long as you went along with them, they wouldn't kill for no reason. Lu Zhan, on the other hand, was different. In their minds, he was killing people without rhyme or reason. Although, so far, it seemed like the ones he had killed weren't good people. Lu Zhan naturally didn't care what these people thought. Demon or saint, having lived through a lifetime, he had long stopped caring about the opinions of others. Strength was his only belief and goal. A full 3 minutes later, the door behind him opened again. Lu Zhan glanced down and said directly, "No one is allowed to approach this private room. Otherwise, death." If he remembered correctly, this dungeon should be a 5-person instance. That meant that after he went in, more people could enter. He didn't want any unexpected events to occur inside the dungeon. With that, he turned around and walked back into the private room. The scene inside was like hell. There wasn't a single intact spot on the 5 corpses. Lu Zhan even saw many bite and tear marks. It was hard not to suspect that Zhang Yu was still conscious and harboring personal grudges. "I've avenged your wrath. Rest in peace," Lu Zhan said to Zhang Yu, who was standing still. He didn't plan on controlling humans as undead. After all, he was still human. Humans had to have some sort of bottom line. Therefore, He directly sacrificed Zhang Yu's undead to number 1. There was no choice. Undead couldn't be reversed. He couldn't directly kill Zhang Yu either. After thinking about it, this was the only way. Of course, the sacrifice failed. Then, Lu Zhan didn't mind the blood all over the room. He walked over and sat down on the sofa. Next, he just had to wait for the dungeon entrance to appear. Time passed little by little. The lobby downstairs was incredibly noisy. When they discovered that the supermarket was no longer guarded, chaos inevitably broke out. Even the people in the other private rooms rushed out to plunder various supplies. Only Lu Zhan's room was undisturbed, or rather, no one dared to approach it. A full half-hour later, Lu Zhan, who had been resting with his eyes closed, finally opened them. In a corner of the room, a vertical black vortex was slowly appearing out of nowhere, eerily. Lu Zhan stood up excitedly. As he wished, the dungeon had finally appeared. Gripping the sword in his hand, Lu Zhan approached the vortex and stepped in. In an instant, Lu Zhan's figure disappeared from the room. At the same time, the dungeon's information appeared in his mind. Dungeon, Goblin Camp, one time. Type, Extermination Dungeon. Level, Normal. Player limit, 1 of 4. The next second, a flash of light appeared before Lu Zhan's eyes. The scenery around him rapidly changed. In the end, he appeared in a grassy field. Not far from the grassy field was a small goblin camp. Dungeons varied in type. Extermination types were the most common. As the name suggested, you had to kill all the monsters in the dungeon to clear it. The levels were also divided into 6 categories: Normal, Adventurer, Hero, King, Hell, Abyss. There was no opportunity to exit a dungeon. Once you stepped in, you either died or cleared it. Before entering, the dungeon wouldn't display any information. Therefore, dungeons represented both opportunity and death. In his previous life, many experts had even fallen after stepping into new dungeons. One-time dungeons like this one didn't have any guides, since they disappeared after being cleared. So Lu Zhan really had no idea how strong the goblin camp was. The student in his previous life who had luckily cleared it wouldn't have promoted such things extensively. As he thought, Lu Zhan summoned number 1. At the entrance of the camp, 2 goblins armed with spears were standing guard, obviously not aware of Lu Zhan's presence. Kill them as quickly as possible. With a thought, number 1 charged towards the camp. By the time the spear-wielding goblins noticed number 1's figure, number 1 was already in front of them. He leaped into the air and slashed his blade at one of the spear-wielding goblins. Eek! The spear-wielding goblin shrieked, raising its spear to fight. But it was already too late. Number 1's blade had already landed on its neck. But number 1's attack didn't instantly kill it. It wasn't until the second strike that Lu Zhan heard the notification of experience gain. It seemed like the strength of these goblin guards was somewhere between the ordinary goblins outside and the elite goblins. As number 1 slashed at the other spear-wielding goblin, the goblin shrieked repeatedly. Soon, the entire camp echoed with shrieks. At the same time, a large number of goblins rushed out. At first glance, there were at least 50 or 60. These goblins were different from the ones outside. They had all kinds of weapons in their hands. Some even had staves. Goblins were an incredibly large race. The ones outside with cleavers were the lowest level, most common goblins. But these goblins should be about as strong as the 2 guards. Otherwise, even if everyone in the cafeteria had died in his previous life, it wouldn't have been possible to clear this dungeon. If that was the case, then he'd just face them head-on. Lu Zhan didn't hesitate. He said in a low voice, "Come forth, my undead." A green light flashed in his eyes. The remaining 7 undead appeared before him and charged forward. Lu Zhan then gripped his sword and walked forward step by step. After all, he had died once before. He cherished his life. It would really suck if he capsized the boat in a ditch because he was too reckless. In front, the battle between the 8 undead and the goblin army broke out instantly. The undead had higher stats than the ordinary goblins. As soon as they made contact, they killed several goblins. Under Lu Zhan's command, number 1 weaved through the goblin ranks, searching for the goblins with staves. The characteristics of mages were high damage. Goblins were no exception. Lu Zhan's first priority was naturally them. But there were too many goblins. Soon, an elite undead was beheaded, returning to eternal rest. A green light flashed in Lu Zhan's eyes. On the ground, 2 of the dead goblins stood up again. As long as there were enough corpses and mana, a necromancer was never afraid of having more enemies. Although the stats of these 2 new ones weren't as good as the elite level ones, they were still stronger than the ordinary goblins. Just as he reanimated those 2, another elite undead was lost. His heart ached. These were all elites that he had spent a lot of effort and time strengthening. Just like that, gone. Without having time to grieve, Lu Zhan steeled his heart and charged forward. It seemed that he had to do it himself. His current mana wasn't enough for a prolonged battle. If he used it all up on these little monsters, what would he use to fight the boss? Chapter 16. Goblin Shaman. In his previous life, Lu Zhan's experience in life and death battles was extremely rich. He was confident that his combat experience and skills wouldn't lose to those top experts. But in this apocalypse, combat skills were the bottom tier. Powerful stats, equipment, skills, items, that was what decided everything. No matter how strong your combat skills were, you couldn't beat an enemy whose movements you couldn't even see. What's more, a random skill from them could instantly kill you. But now that the apocalypse had just begun, equipment, skills, and everything else hadn't appeared yet. Then, combat skills were the key to deciding everything. Lu Zhan, charging into the goblin ranks, was like a god of slaughter. While constantly dodging attacks, every strike went for the vitals of these goblins. But there were too many goblins. There were still many attacks that landed on Lu Zhan's body. If he had a normal spirit swordsman's body, he would have been on his knees long ago. Unfortunately, under the protection of the undead lord, his 3 major stats were all high. He was a solid triangular warrior. Lu Zhan kept reanimating undead to maintain the buff, while frantically killing goblins. This high-intensity battle didn't tire him out. Instead, it made him excited. The timid guy who used to hide everywhere was dead. In this life, he would fight to the top. In just 5 minutes, dozens of goblins had been slaughtered, and all of Lu Zhan's undead except number 1 were replaced. All of his elites, which he had, painstakingly strengthened for most of the day, were gone. If the rewards for clearing this dungeon weren't generous, he could cry on the spot. Eek, eek, eek. Just then, 5 goblins walked out of the tent in the middle of the camp. Boss fight. Lu Zhan took a deep breath, cheered himself up, and looked at them. These 5 goblins were clearly unusual. The surrounding 4 were about a meter tall, wearing green soft armor and holding large blades. They looked stronger than the goblin squad leaders. As for the goblin in the middle, its small body was hunched over, and it was holding a staff. But the most unique thing was that it was the leader of these 5 goblins, the king of this camp. Information about this thing quickly flashed in Lu Zhan's mind. Goblin Shaman. As for the other 4 tall goblins, they were goblin guards. All 5 were elite-level goblins. This was going to be a tough battle. Soon, except for number 1, the other 8 undead charged towards those 5 goblins. This goblin shaman's own combat power wasn't strong, but it was very annoying. It was a super support and a powerful healer. In a situation where the strength difference wasn't too big, there was almost no chance of winning by force. Because under the shaman's blessing, those 4 goblin guards were practically immortal warriors. They were even more annoying than the undead. This goblin shaman was also very cunning. It always kept itself under the protection of the 4 guards. The best way to fight a 1-heal-4 team was to wear it down. Not by wearing down the health, but by wearing down the goblin shaman's mana. Humans had mana. Monsters naturally had it too. Wearing down a team was what a necromancer was best at. Lu Zhan quickly formulated a tactic. The next second, 8 undead charged over. As for number 1, it was still by his side. This little guy was his precious. He couldn't just use it to wear them down. Eek, eek. The short goblin waved its staff and shrieked. The surrounding 4 goblins immediately went wild, visibly becoming stronger. This skill was similar to the squad leader's frenzy, but the effect was much more powerful. It was like super frenzy. As soon as the 2 sides made contact, 2 undead were chopped into pieces. Lu Zhan didn't hesitate. He quickly reanimated 2 and continued to fight. Time passed little by little. Lu Zhan's mana had just bottomed out, and he had drunk a bottle of low-level mana potion. But up front, the goblin shaman was still constantly casting skills to restore the health and status of the 4 guards. After fighting for a long time, The 4 goblin guards were still full of life. There wasn't even a scratch on them. Unless he could kill a guard directly with a powerful attack, no matter how serious the injuries, the goblin shaman could quickly restore it to full health. This made Zhan feel that something was wrong. Even if the shaman was strong, it was still just an elite monster. It couldn't have that much mana to cast skills, unless it was carrying equipment that recovered mana, and it wasn't low level. That way, their combination was like a perpetual motion machine. He was afraid that his mana would run out first. At that time, when the undead were exhausted, it would be 5 of them against him. He couldn't wait any longer. Zhan changed his tactics immediately. Prioritize killing the goblin shaman? That wouldn't work. Although this little thing was a shaman, it was very agile. Its agility was clearly not low, with the 4 guards desperately protecting it. Forcing a kill had too many uncertain factors. The risk factor was too high. Then, he would use the old tactic. Number 1, let's go. With a thought, Zhan charged forward with his sword. The actions of number 1 beside him weren't slow either. In the battle in front, the 5 undead who had been attacking separately suddenly pounced on the same goblin guard. One grabbed the head, and the remaining 4 grabbed the arms and legs, restricting its movements. Then, the remaining 3 undead, plus Zhan and number 1, attacked that goblin at the same time. They disregarded everything, determined to kill this goblin guard with all their might. Eek eek! The goblin shaman shrieked. It clearly realized the enemy's intention and frantically cast healing spells. The goblin guard under attack staggered for a moment, but didn't fall. With a shriek, it broke free from its restraints. Zhan and number 1 retreated quickly, as if fleeing. But the other undead didn't react that quickly. They were directly grabbed by the 3 goblin guards and chopped into pieces, returning to eternal rest. Eek eek! The goblin shaman pointed at Zhan, its whole body trembling. It seemed to be mocking its opponent's overestimation of its own abilities. In this wave, Zhan directly lost 5 undead, including the last remaining squad leader undead, which had its head chopped off. The team he had painstakingly built was completely wiped out except for number 1. In contrast, the goblin shaman's 4 guards were unscathed. The next second, just as the goblin shaman was still mocking him, the previously attacked goblin guard suddenly turned around and slashed its blade at its shaman lord. Its eyes glowed green. It had clearly been turned into an undead. In that moment, Zhan had succeeded in instantly killing this guy. Then, without stopping, he reanimated it as an undead. From the shaman's point of view, it was as if nothing had happened. The goblin shaman never expected this turn of events. The blade struck its neck directly, almost severing it. The goblin shaman shrieked and quickly retreated to avoid the guard's next attack, while frantically casting healing spells on itself. Chapter 17. The Chalice Ring. Keep pressing forward. Zhan was down to his last 30 mana points. He decided to stop resurrecting new undead for now and charged ahead once more with 1. But his target still wasn't the goblin shaman. The creature appeared to have lost half its neck, but thanks to its frenzied healing, it was rapidly regenerating at a visible pace. He, 1, the newly resurrected undead guards, plus the original 3 undead, all swarmed another goblin warrior. The shaman was too preoccupied with its own injuries to worry about its subordinates. In mere seconds, the goblin warrior was hacked to death. Zhan's eyes flashed green once more, instantly resurrecting it as a new undead. Then they all attacked the 3rd goblin warrior together. From there, the battle became simple. By the time the goblin shaman had completely healed itself, all 4 of its warriors had been resurrected as undead, staring blankly at it with glowing green eyes. Yeah. The goblin retreated in terror. Without its minions, it was nothing but a lamb waiting for slaughter. Zhan didn't hold back. He immediately commanded all the undead to attack. 9 undead piled on, and even the shaman's powerful healing skills couldn't withstand the onslaught. 3 minutes later, the system notifications kept ringing in Zhan's mind as the goblin shaman finally collapsed to the ground, dead. Ding! Killed goblin shaman, gained experience. Ding! Congratulations! You have leveled up to level 5. Ding! Congratulations! You have cleared the goblin camp dungeon. Reward: 800 experience points, 1,000 gold coins. Ding! Congratulations! You are the 8th player worldwide to clear the dungeon. Dungeon clear reward doubled. Reward, special title, Dungeon Buster. Sweet. A smile broke out on Lu Zhan's face, but at the same time, he felt a twinge of anxiety. Even after all that, there were still 7 people ahead of him. He glanced at his stats. Not only had his experience reached level 5, but with the double reward, it was already at 80%. Level 6 was just around the corner. As for the Dungeon Buster title, its attributes were straightforward and brutal. Overall attributes increased by 10% inside dungeons. It was a dungeon-crawling cheat code. After closing his stats, Lu Zhan looked towards the Goblin Shaman's location. Several orbs were floating above it. That was where the real dungeon rewards lay. Lu Zhan stepped forward and immediately spotted the most eye-catching orb, radiating a purple glow. Purple equipment. He couldn't help but tremble. In his previous life, after grinding for so long, he had never managed to acquire even a single piece of purple equipment. Lu Zhan picked up the purple orb, solemnly crushed it, and felt an indescribable excitement. It was a ring, shaped like a small purple chalice. Chalice ring. Grade, purple. Equipment requirement, level 5. Mana plus 100. Mana regeneration plus 10 per second. Cooldown reduction, minus 3 seconds. Mage skill effect plus 10%. Every single attribute was useful. Even among purple equipment, this ring was top tier. And for mage-type classes, it was practically a godsend. Lu Zhan remembered that in his previous life, the guy who took off after clearing this dungeon was a mage-type class. No wonder. With this thing early on, even a pig could fly. Lu Zhan couldn't wait to equip the chalice ring. Instantly, his mana started to surge, fully restored in just 5 seconds. Moreover, he glanced at his stat screen. The resurrection undead cooldown had become 2 seconds. However, he wasn't sure how the plus 10% to skill effect would manifest. The usual plus 10% to damage or plus 10% to range was easy to understand, but he had never encountered the term effect plus 10%. He'd have to experiment with it later. After calming his excited mood, Lu Zhan looked at the other loot. 1 skill point, 2 enhancement stones, and surprisingly, a skill book. Healing Witchcraft. Learning requirement, level 3, healing class attribute. Lu Zhan sighed. He was a necromancer. There was no way his class attributes included healing. The skill's effectiveness was obvious from the Goblin Shaman's use of it. It was incredibly powerful, but even if he couldn't learn it, he could still sell it for a good price. Just then, the system notification chimed in time. Ding! The dungeon will close in 10 seconds. Please prepare. Lu Zhan quickly glanced at the Goblin Shaman and resurrected it as an undead. Then, he resurrected a few more ordinary goblins to fill up all 11 undead slots. The next second, the surrounding scenery changed instantly, and he reappeared in the private room. Lu Zhan quickly examined the newly resurrected undead. The Goblin Shaman disappointed him. He hadn't expected that after becoming undead, it would lose its shaman abilities and become a pure warrior-type undead, no different from the others. Undead had no souls, which meant no spirit, no intelligence, and naturally, no way to cast spells. But when he saw another one, he was surprised, followed by delight. Because this newly resurrected goblin undead was noticeably stronger than the others. This must be the effect of the plus 10% skill effect, increasing the stats of the resurrected undead by 10%. For a necromancer, it was a cheat-level effect. The stats of undead were already higher than those of monsters. Stack that with the 10% from his talent and the 10% from the chalice ring, and the undead stats could directly affect him. In his eyes, this ring was as valuable as a piece of golden divine equipment. Only 4 words were going through his mind. I'm gonna be invincible. After calming his mood, Lu Zhan added the newly acquired skill point to Undead Sacrifice. This way, he should be able to further enhance one. As for the 2 enhancement stones, an idea came to him, and the system notification soon followed. Ding! Enhanced Chalice Ring. Requires 10 enhancement stones and 10,000 gold coins. Ding! Insufficient enhancement stones. Insufficient gold coins. Enhancement failed. Even though he had expected it, Lu Zhan couldn't help but curse aloud. Damn! It's robbery. Helpless, he could only continue to enhance the undead ring. Ding! Enhance undead ring. Consume 200 gold coins. Enhance. Enhance. Ding. Congratulations. Enhancement successful. Ding. Enhance undead ring. Consume 300 gold coins. Enhance. Enhance. Ding. Congratulations. Enhancement successful. That was nice. He succeeded twice in a row. But the gold coins were being consumed too quickly. The 2,000 gold coins he received from the dungeon reward were gone in an instant. Zhan complained as he looked at the enhanced undead ring. Undead ring +3. Mana +30. Skill cooldown -1 second. Contains an undead space that can store undead creatures and has the effect of repairing undead. Seeing these attributes, the frustration in Zhan's heart vanished, and he grinned once more. The goddess of luck was really taking care of him. Among the many attributes, skill cooldown was one of the rarest, and he had obtained 2 in such a short time. Wouldn't it be an understatement to call this luck a blessing from the gods? Feeling the 2 rings in his hand, Zhan felt great. He opened the door and walked out. The hall was much emptier. It seemed they were fighting over the resources in the supermarket. Seeing Zhan come out, a few even quickly hid things behind their backs, afraid of being robbed. Zhan naturally didn't bother with them. He went directly from the 3rd floor down to the windows. Along the way, the people around him stepped aside, afraid of angering this demon. Zhan stood by the window and glanced outside. The goblins were still surrounding the building, guarding the humans' food. If he remembered correctly, the goblin champion was the strongest monster in the entire campus. The first day of the apocalypse could actually be seen as a tutorial given to humans by God. Only goblins had invaded, and the strongest was only a champion-level monster. But when the clock struck 12 tonight, this end-of-the-world game would truly begin. As soon as 12 o'clock arrived, if nothing went wrong, none of those trapped in the cafeteria building would survive. Even with Zhan's current strength, facing the goblin champion and so many goblins was a perilous situation. Of course, if he wanted to escape, he could escape at any time. But he didn't plan to. So many goblins outside were experience points, gold coins, undead. There was no way he'd let them go. He was waiting for a dog to appear. Chapter 18. That was a dog. With the arrival of the apocalypse, humans could choose a class to level up and become stronger. Animals also underwent huge changes. They didn't have classes and couldn't level up, but they mutated, evolving into another powerful creature, mutated beasts. Mutated beasts had all kinds of abilities, and their method of becoming stronger was simple: eat the monsters. The more they ate, the stronger they became. In the future, the fact that the world hadn't been completely conquered by the interdimensional monsters was in large part thanks to the mutated beasts. Although mutated beasts weren't friendly to humans either, as fellow natives of this planet, they naturally hated the invading interdimensional monsters even more. And in this campus, there was a powerful mutated beast. A dog, a stray dog. In his previous life, it was hard to imagine that the one who saved the students in the cafeteria was that very dog. Of course, the dog didn't come specifically to save them. It saw the goblins and got hungry. So it charged into the goblin horde and started wreaking havoc. The students in the cafeteria took the opportunity to rush out, and under the leadership of the lucky one who cleared the dungeon, successfully escaped the cafeteria building. But sadly, the dog was blinded by hunger and charged directly into the goblin horde, where it was killed by the goblin champion. Otherwise, if it had continued to grow, it would have become a terrifying mutated beast. Back in the private room, Zhan closed the door and summoned one, ordering it to stand guard. Anyone who dared to enter would be killed without mercy. Then, he sat on the sofa and closed his eyes. According to the events of his previous life, the dog would appear after the dungeon was cleared. But now he had cleared the dungeon 2 hours faster than in his previous life. He needed to rest to prepare for the upcoming battle. Ever since the apocalypse broke out, his nerves had been tense. Although the physical fatigue decreased with the increase in his physique, he was still quite tired mentally. Mainly, his spirit stat was too low. Thinking of this, Zhan immediately added the 3 attribute points he had gained from leveling up to spirit. The spirit stat was also extremely important. As far as he knew, there were hidden classes and skills that specifically targeted spirit attacks. If his spirit was low, he wouldn't even know how he died. As for intelligence, forget it. There was nothing wrong with being a mentally challenged necromancer. Do you think someone will come to save us? They will. They definitely will. The army has weapons, bombs, missiles, and nuclear bombs. They can definitely kill all these little monsters. Don't worry. How laughable. If they were going to save us, they would have come already. Haha, let's just wait to die. Damn it, I shouldn't have hidden here. Now we can't even get out? Those monsters outside are playing with us, trying to make us kill each other. In the hall, the despair was spreading. Zhou stood by the window, ignoring the discussions. There were more and more of these goblin monsters. He turned and glanced at the room where Zhan was, a flash of desire for battle in his eyes. Zhan was right. In this apocalypse, you couldn't rely on others. You could only rely on yourself. And the heavens had already given them the means to rely on themselves. Classes. He was also waiting for Zhan's next move. He knew that Zhan wouldn't just stay there. And when the other party acted, he would follow no matter what. If not to eat the meat and drink the soup, at least he would get some leftovers. Suddenly, Zhou saw a flash of lightning in the distance. What was that? Just as he widened his eyes to see more clearly, he suddenly heard a voice in his ear. That was a dog. It turned out that Zhan was already next to him without him noticing. Liu. Brother Liu. Zhou was a little restrained, even though the person next to him was younger. When watching TV before, he always thought that imposing aura and overbearing power were bullshit. But at this moment, he actually felt that kind of feeling, revering someone even when standing next to them. The opportunity is here. Whether you can seize it depends on you. Zhan said. The improvements from his increased physique influenced many things, including his vision. Although it was already night outside, he could still see the figure of the dog in the distance. A large black dog, nearly a meter tall and nearly 1.5 meters long. The most special thing about it was its eyes, which were golden yellow and occasionally flashed with lightning. This guy had obviously exceeded the normal size of a dog. He wondered how many goblins it had eaten to evolve to this level. The large black dog looked at the large number of goblins, drooling. A bolt of lightning suddenly surged from its body, with the momentum of shattering the darkness with lightning. The goblin champion naturally sensed the energy of the lightning, roared, and charged forward with its battle axe. The time has come. A smile appeared on Zhan's face. He actually broke the window and jumped down, opening the undead ring at the same time, and all 11 undead appeared. What he was wary of was the goblin champion. Now that guy had been lured away by the big black dog, he was free to cause damage. Then, let the slaughter begin. One landed first, sweeping his broadsword, killing 3 ordinary goblins. The other undead were not far behind, especially the 4 goblins. The strength of the undead was far stronger than that of ordinary goblins, making them exceptionally brave and powerful. But soon, 3 undead were ganged up and killed, returning to nothingness. But what about that? With a 2-second cooldown and nearly infinite mana, when one fell, another would rise. Zhan's eyes flashed constantly. One after another the fallen bodies rise up. In the world of necromancers, there is no such thing as too many enemies, because he can turn all enemies into his undead. Zhou face changed as he stood by the window. He didn't expect Zhan to jump directly into the goblin horde. In his view, it was like a sheep entering a tiger's den. F***ck your mother. Life and death are up to fate. Wealth and power are in the sky. Zhou cursed loudly. His head was rushing blood, and he jumped down without thinking. But immediately, he panicked. This was a full 5 meters high. Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. At the critical moment, Zhou pointed his spear at a goblin in mid-air, activating the skill, Thrust. His body went forward, and the spear directly exploded the goblin's head. The power of the skill directly offset the force of falling from the building, and he landed on the ground. So dangerous. The goddess of luck was blessing him. His class was a lancer, but luck isn't what he expected. But the next second, a large number of goblins came charging at him. Zhou didn't dare to stay, so he quickly fled towards Zhan. It's good to enjoy the shade under a big tree, and Zhan was that big tree. Chapter 19. Talent Absorption. The more you fight, the stronger you get. Are those 2 going down there to die? Don't bother with them. Good riddance. One less mouth to feed. With so many monsters, even if he's strong, He's as good as dead. Damn it, he even broke the window. I wonder if those monsters will jump up here. Should we try to break out? If you want to go, you go yourself. I'm going to wait here for rescue. Inside the hall, a group of people stood by the windows, gossiping. But soon, everyone shut their mouths. The scene they had imagined, the two of them being torn to shreds, didn't happen. Instead, goblins began to die in droves, then inexplicably stood up again, attacking their former comrades. The scene was too strange, and combined with the darkness of the night, it sent chills down many spines. Zhan, meanwhile, was covered head to toe in green blood. He had lost count of how many goblins he had killed and how many he had resurrected. The system, in a rare display of human-like understanding, sensed that Zhan was currently engaged in a massive slaughter and refrained from constantly blaring the sound of experience and gold coins gained. Otherwise, Zhan's brain would have short-circuited from the constant ding-ding-ding sounds. However, the sound of leveling up still rang out at the right time. Ding! Congratulations! You have reached level 6. Level 6. That meant Zhan could now resurrect 13 undead. Then, rise, my undead. Zhan's eyes flashed ghostly green, and 2 goblin corpses stood up again. Ha ha ha, this is too awesome. This feeling. I'm about to reach enlightenment. Just then, Zhokai beside him suddenly roared. Then his spear flashed like a dragon. His body was actually starting to glow faintly. Zhokai was ecstatic. His class talent was the more you fight, the stronger you get. And as the battle continued, his strength, stamina, and agility attributes would constantly increase. In simple terms, the longer he fought, the stronger he became. And there was no limit. Theoretically, if he kept fighting, he could become invincible. This talent was practically a cheat code. Zhokai could already imagine himself reaching the peak in battle. But he neglected a line of precautions behind the talent description. Talent comes with negative effects. The longer the fight, the more severe the negative effects. Individuals with low spirit should be cautious. Zhokai's strength attribute had already broken through the 20-point barrier, and it was still slowly increasing. An unprecedented feeling of power filled his entire body, making his blood boil. Kill, kill, kill. Zhokai shattered a goblin's head with his spear, then rushed out with his spear. His spirit was becoming more and more excited, as if his mind was only filled with the word battle, like a madman. Zhan frowned. He naturally noticed that Zhokai was getting stronger little by little, and starting to become strange. Zhokai already had many wounds on his body, but he didn't seem to feel anything. Even if he could get stronger with every battle, it was impossible for him to kill all the goblins. The only result of continuing was death. Perhaps even when he died, he wouldn't realize that he had already died. Zhokai, wake up! Zhan rushed over and slapped the top of his head with the side of his sword. This guy was still considered a good person, so if he could save him, he would naturally save him. But the next second, Zhokai suddenly turned around. His eyes were already bloodshot, and there was only one word in his mouth. Kill, 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 kill. Then he actually raised his spear and attacked Zhan. Zhan dodged this spear, while increasing his force, and smacked the hilt of his sword hard on Zhokai's head. Some blood flowed from Zhokai's head, but he still didn't react, and came charging with his red eyes. Sigh, he's beyond saving. Zhan sighed. This guy had completely lost his mind, and even knocking him unconscious was impossible. Continuing like this would only have 2 results, either killing everything he could, or death. Perhaps those with mental-type classes would have a way to save him, but there was definitely nowhere to find them right now. 1. Kill him. Zhan said while fleeing from Zhokai's attack range. He couldn't let Zhokai kill like this. First, these goblins were all experience and gold coins, and if Zhokai killed too many, he would get less. Second, this guy was already certain to die, and killing too many would be a waste. Zhan wasn't a saint. The premise of saving people was to protect his own interests. One had just chopped down a goblin captain, and when he heard the order, he instantly jumped in front of Zhokai and swung his broadsword directly at his head. Perhaps in another hour of battle, Zhokai's attributes could catch up with one's, but right now, he was far from it. With one strike, Zhokai relied on his fighting instincts to tilt his head, barely avoiding the risk of being instantly killed with a headshot. But his shoulder was directly hacked into, and blood spurted out wildly. Kill, kill, kill. Even so, Zhou Kai still had red eyes, and launched the skill thrust at one. Regardless, Zhan no longer cared and his eyes turned ghostly green. In just a moment, 3 undead had been brutally dismembered, and even the guard undead brought out from the dungeon had all returned to nothingness. There was no way around this. Zhan could only try his best to protect his precious one. As for the others, they could be replaced. After resurrecting 3 undead, Zhan looked into the distance. From there, the goblin champion's roar could be heard from time to time, and flashes of lightning was the battlefield of the big black dog and the goblin champion. In his previous life, there was no doubt that the big black dog would be killed by the goblin champion. In this life, if it weren't for him, there wouldn't be any accidents either. But just then, the system rang out in his mind. Ding! Congratulations! Your undead has absorbed the talent. The more you fight, the stronger you get. Zhan was shocked and quickly looked towards one. He saw that this guy was actually stepping on Zhou Kai's corpse, as if absorbing some kind of aura, which should be the so-called talent. This was completely beyond Zhan's expectations, and he quickly looked at one's attributes. Talent. The more you fight, the stronger you get. As the battle continues, strength, stamina, and agility attributes will constantly increase. Note: talent comes with negative effects. The longer the fight, the more severe the negative effects. Individuals with low spirit should be cautious. Damn! Zhan could only use this one word to express his feelings about this talent. The so-called negative effect should be losing one's mind and becoming a monster that only knew how to fight. No wonder Zhou Kai would enter that state just now. That guy's spirit was probably at most around 10, so how could he withstand this overbearing negative effect? And seeing this talent, Zhan suddenly thought of a certain legend from his previous life. Legend has it that there was a human camp that was attacked by a large number of monsters. At the critical moment, a strong man from the camp stood up and fought for 3 days and 3 nights. Not only did he kill all the monsters, but he also killed all the humans in the camp. Chapter 20. Axe Blade Storm. This talent was like a double-edged sword, and both edges were extremely sharp. But Zhan looked at one, his eyes growing brighter and brighter. It was a double-edged sword for humans, but what did it have to do with his undead? What was spirit? Undead didn't even have spirit. Everything about the undead was controlled by the Necromancer. There was no risk of losing control at all. For one to get this talent, it was equivalent to having no negative effects. 1. Follow me to kill the enemy. Zhan was in high spirits and couldn't help but roar, while rushing towards the battlefield of the goblin champion and the big black dog. If he waited any longer, the big black dog would probably be killed. Then, even if Zhan brought a dozen undead, he wouldn't be able to beat the goblin champion. Although escaping wouldn't be a problem, that wasn't Zhan's style. Zhan planned to eat all these goblins, including the goblin champion. Although the difference between a champion and an elite was only 1 level, the difference in strength was extremely large. The big black dog wasn't a match. Zhan wasn't a match either. Only by working together could he have a chance to kill the goblin champion. One was in front, directly killing a bloody path through the goblin horde, while Zhan constantly resurrected and controlled other undead to cover their backs. In just half a minute, they had already reached the battlefield where the big black dog was. The big black dog was in a terrible state at the moment. There was a long scar on his face that went directly through his right eye, and his body was covered in blood. He had none of his former mighty appearance. But even so, this guy was still baring his teeth, with lightning flashing around him. As for the goblin champion, several parts of its body were charred by electricity, and it had obviously suffered a lot of injuries. Of course, it was much better off than the big black dog. Cooperation, you want the corpse, I want the rest. Zhan pointed to the goblin champion and said directly to the big black dog. The so-called mutated beasts had already broken away from the category of ordinary animals. Although they couldn't directly speak human language, it was no problem for them to understand Zhan's consciousness. But the big black dog glared fiercely at Zhan with its one eye, baring its teeth. In its view, both humans and monsters were enemies. Zhan didn't care about it, and directly ordered one to launch an attack on the goblin champion. Yeah. The goblin champion roared, as if questioning why one was helping the humans, while sweeping out its battle axe horizontally as fast as lightning. One couldn't dodge in time and could only block in front of him with his broadsword. With a boom, one's body was directly sent flying and fell heavily to the ground. If it were a normal living being, it would have been seriously injured, but one immediately jumped up. As an undead, there was no such thing as being injured, unless it was eternal death. The big black dog next to him said he didn't want to, but his body was very honest, and he took the opportunity to jump up, directly pouncing on the goblin champion, while lightning raged around him. The goblin champion screamed, and one hand quickly grabbed the dog's head and violently threw it away. But before it could recover, Zhan and one's attacks had already arrived at the same time, one on the left and one on the right, one sword and one broadsword. The goblin champion roared, raised its battle axe with both hands, and its entire body actually began to spin directly. Zhan quickly retreated while telling one to dodge. If he was caught in it, he would be directly turned into minced meat. Zhan recognized this move. It was the goblin champion's ultimate move, Axe Blade Storm, a terrifying destructive force. The rotating goblin champion didn't stop either and swept towards the big black dog like a tornado. The big black dog obviously knew that this thing couldn't be touched and quickly jumped away. 1. Be prepared. Looking at this seemingly intimidating Axe Blade Storm, Zhan was not afraid, but excited and directly ordered one. The goblin champion's ultimate move had high damage, a wide range, and was accompanied by a control effect, and there was no way to escape, making it a god-level AoE skill. The only disadvantage was that it wasn't easy to hit anyone, and there was also a very serious aftereffect. That was that it would fall into a period of dizziness after releasing it. This goblin champion must have had its brain short-circuited by the lightning. That was indeed the case. The continuous electric shocks didn't cause any fatal damage, but they paralyzed its nerves and the electricity destroyed the brain, and now it only wanted to chop all the enemies into minced meat. The Axe Blade Storm lasted a full 10 seconds, but it didn't attack any enemies. And when the goblin stopped spinning, Zhan and one had already rushed towards this behemoth like two bolts of lightning. As for the big black dog, it was still on high alert. It didn't know that the goblin champion had spun itself dizzy. Just now, that thing had really scared it a lot, so it didn't dare to act rashly. This was the advantage of intelligence. If Zhan didn't know the after effects, he wouldn't dare to go forward rashly, and he would have missed the best time to attack. Zhan wasn't polite either, taking advantage of its dizziness to kill it, and thrust his sword straight at the goblin champion's head. As for one, he was also swinging his broadsword at the opponent's neck, preparing to behead him directly. But with a ding sound, the sword that Zhan picked up shattered directly, breaking into several pieces. One's broadsword did cut in, but only a few millimeters, far from reaching the point of beheading. Yahoo! The goblin champion roared, instantly waking up, and its battle axe directly chopped at one. Fortunately, one had already retreated under Zhan's order, but the broadsword couldn't be pulled out and could only be temporarily stuck in the goblin champion's neck. This guy actually understood some medical knowledge and didn't directly pull out the broadsword. In the next second, lightning had arrived rapidly. The big black dog's attack was extremely tricky. The lightning just happened to strike the connection between the broadsword and the neck. Yeah. The goblin champion was trembling all over. Previously, being able to withstand the lightning mainly relied on this body of skin, but now the lightning directly entered its body through the wound. The destructive power of lightning could be imagined. Taking this opportunity, Zhan directly grabbed the hilt of the sword and pulled it with all his strength. With a poof sound, a large amount of green liquid spurted out. The big black dog saw this and rushed up directly, with lightning surrounding its body. Damn it! You're a mutated beast and you can't level up. Why are you stealing experience? Zhan cursed angrily, directly called on the other dozen undead, +1 and himself. All rushed towards the goblin champion. If the large amount of experience from the last blow was taken away by this big black dog, he would have to cry. For a time, one human, one dog, plus a dozen undead rushed at the goblin champion at the same time. The goblin champion's neck was constantly gushing out blood, but it was still extremely brave, and with one axe, it directly chopped apart 3 undead. But it itself was also hit by several attacks at the same time, especially one With the blessing of the more you fight, the stronger you get, its attributes had already shown a significant increase, and with one strike, it directly slashed at the other side of the goblin champion's neck, and then pulled it out with force. The big black dog also didn't show weakness. Lightning flashed, not distinguishing between friend and foe. Perhaps in its eyes, all were enemies. Chapter 21. Thief King. Damn it. After I take care of this guy, I'll settle the score with you. Zhan felt a jolt run through his body and quickly retreated from the battlefield. The big black dog's lightning ability was too OP. Not only did it deal extremely high damage, but it also came with a paralysis effect. Even the undead would freeze for a split second when hit by the electricity. Woof! The big black dog barked madly, jumping up and biting down hard on the goblin champion's neck wound, tearing out a large piece of flesh and swallowing it whole. As the flesh went down, the wounds on the big black dog's body actually began to heal slowly. For humans, monsters were experience, gold coins, and powerful equipment and items. But for mutated beasts, they were energy for strengthening, a panacea. Having eaten this bite, the big black dog became even more excited and was about to continue biting. But the next second, a sword had already slammed heavily into its body, knocking it flying. The big black dog climbed up, growling as it looked at one. Former comrades instantly transformed into enemies. Stay on the sidelines for me. If you don't behave, I'll chop you up too. Zhan looked at the big black dog and said unceremoniously. To prevent the kill from being stolen by this big black dog, Zhan directly had one drive it out of the battlefield. Anyway, this goblin champion only had one hit point left. He could kill it himself. How could the big black dog submit? Lightning flashed around its body, and it charged towards one. One was not afraid at all. At this time, his agility attribute was almost 60, and his speed was ridiculously fast. With a leap, he actually jumped directly onto the big black dog's back. The big black dog went completely crazy, running wildly, trying to throw one off. Zhan no longer cared. In a normal state, one might not be a match for this big black dog. But now, with the talent buff, one's three main attributes had already broken through 60, and the big black dog hadn't recovered from the injuries it had sustained from the goblin champion. It wouldn't be a problem for one to beat up this big black dog. If this big black dog didn't know what was good for it, Zhan wouldn't mind if one killed it directly. As for Zhan himself, he directly killed the ordinary goblins that charged up, while constantly resurrecting undead, letting them charge at the goblin champion. This guy looked like he was about to die, but the attacks of a dying beast were still terrifying. For safety's sake, it was better to let the undead grind it to death. When it was time to take risks, he wasn't afraid of danger. When it was time to be cautious, he would never be impulsive. Everything was for the sake of surviving better. He ground down the goblin champion for a good 15 minutes. The big black dog ran out of patience and pounced back into the fray, taking swipes at the champion. It just kept running around, and that's all it was doing, running. The injuries began to heal, and the undead began to become more powerful. It was a very strange sight to see, and that's how you knew that the apocalypse was here for real. Finally, the goblin champion's body collapsed with a crash. Ding! Congratulations! You have killed the goblin champion, gained 600 experience points, 800 gold coins. Ding! Congratulations! You have leveled up to level 7. Level 7. 15 undead now. Rise, my undead. Zhan looked at the goblin corpses on the ground, and ghostly green lights kept popping out of his eyes. A full 14 undead goblins stood before him, looking quite majestic. Go, kill them all. At this time, there were only 100 or so goblins left on this huge square. Many of the students who had been watching the show in the cafeteria had rushed down, mustering the courage to kill those goblins, wanting to get a little bit of the leftovers after Zhan. Zhan didn't care. These people could kill at most a dozen goblins. That bit of experience wasn't even a drop in the bucket for him. Woof, woof, woof. Just then, Zhan suddenly heard a pitiful whimper coming from not far away. Following the sound, he saw an extremely strange scene. The big black dog was slumped all over, lying on the ground, while one was riding on its back, as if showing off his power. What the hell? Could it be that the big black dog had been subdued by one? One, come back? Zhan ordered in surprise. One jumped directly off the dog's back and was already in front of Zhan. But the big black dog didn't run away or attack, but came over wagging its tail, lowering its noble dog head, obviously wanting to follow. Zhan had heard that mutated beasts were creatures that extremely admired the strong. In his previous life, each of the 8 emperors had a powerful mutated beast as a mount, all of which they had subdued. But he had never thought that even the mutated beast that he had yet to get follow him, so he couldn't help but feel as though there was a great and unfair truth at play. That his undead had a beast before he did felt so wrong. It was a twisted order of things. Still, he was strong now and would change all of that. He would rise to be the new man of the apocalypse. Zhan had one sit on the big black dog. Sure enough, the big black dog didn't resist at all, but instead looked quite excited, looking like it had completely changed from a thunder dog to a simp dog. Just as Zhan's heart was filled with envy, suddenly, his eyes suddenly burst out with a bright light, and then he burst out and rushed to the goblin champion's corpse. One of the orbs that had been dropped from the corpse had disappeared. Someone had taken advantage of Zhan's distraction just now to steal it. How dare you steal my things? You're simply courting death. Zhan's heart was filled with hostility. There wasn't anyone around. There was only one possibility. The other party had turned invisible. He quickly guessed the other party's identity. A thief, and not one of those hiding in the cafeteria. At least level 3 or 4. Zhan narrowed his eyes, sneering in his heart. In his previous life, everyone could rob him. In this life, no one could rob him, not even the future emperors. Thinking that you can be undetected by turning invisible? Too naive. Zhan directly added all the attribute points he had gained from leveling up to spirit. The spirit attribute didn't add damage or defense, it only regenerated mana and countered mental type hidden classes, and seemed to have little use. But it had many hidden uses. Perception was one of them. The higher the spirit, the higher the perception. With the addition of 6 spirit points, Zhan still couldn't see the invisible guy, but he vaguely felt an unusual aura. I've got you, Zhan said directly. The next second, one, who had been on the dog's back, rushed out directly. A moment ago, the more you fight, the stronger you get talent effect had disappeared, but even so, one's agility was still as fast as lightning for most players at the moment, and he swung his sword at the air. But there was no reaction. Aren't you coming out yet? Zhan sneered, and one's broadsword didn't stop, constantly attacking that area in different directions. Finally, when he swung out his 7th strike, a stream of blood spurted out of the air. Then, a figure appeared. Wait, I surrender. I'll give you back the item. This guy was wearing a black bodysuit and looked like he had been a student at this university. But the most striking thing was the other party's ears, pointed and long. These were elven ears. Like that Shinjalua. This was an elven thief. A hidden class? Zhan instantly thought of a name. The Thief King, one of the 12 heavenly kings of his last life. An extremely mysterious top-level powerhouse. Could it be that the guy in front of him would be one of the future 12 heavenly kings? But, so what if he's the Thief King? So what if it's a hidden class? Anyone who touches his things, no matter who it is, must die. Kill him, Zhan said with extreme coldness. One immediately struck with his sword. You can't kill me. I'm an elven thief. If you kill me, you'll regret it. No, cursed. The voice stopped abruptly. The thief who had revealed himself had no power to fight back in front of one. Chapter 22, Curse of the Elf. Ding, killed player, gained 500 gold coins. Ding, gained negative effect, Curse of the Elf. Zhan frowned. He had never heard of this so-called Curse of the Elf, but it didn't sound like a good thing. Opening the attribute panel, sure enough, there was a blood-red message behind the attributes. Curse of the Elf. You have become a common enemy of all elves. Any elf-type professional within a kilometer of you will receive the cursed information. Killing the cursed will give the killer all of the cursed experience points, skill points, gold coins, equipment, and items. Damn it! Zhan cursed in his heart. This curse was equivalent to turning him into a big boss in the eyes of all elf-type professionals. Not to mention anything else, it was about experience points. He was currently at level 7. Which elf-type professional wouldn't be tempted? More importantly, Elf-type professionals were all within the scope of hidden professions, and their strength was extremely terrifying, such as that future elf queen, Shunjalo. Damn, afraid of your birds. Whoever dares to kill me, I'll kill them. A hostile spirit rose in Lu Zhan's heart, and he didn't regret killing the elven thief just now. If he had to live so suffocated in this life, what was the point? Walking to the thief's body, Lu Zhan picked up the orb that was lying near his hand. Inside was a green close-fitting leather armor. After squeezing it, Goblin Warrior leather armor. Quality, green. Equipment requirement, level 3. Agility plus 10. Although it was just a piece of green equipment, a full 10 points of agility could be considered excellent gear. That guy could really pick things. Lu Zhan wasn't picky either. He took off his coat on the spot, put this green leather armor on his body, and it was cool and comfortable. Instantly, he felt light as a swallow. Then he quickly put on his jacket. Being green all over was really too conspicuous. Then, he walked to the Goblin Champion's corpse. There were 2 orbs waiting for him to accept there. 1 enhancement stone and 1 axe. The shape of this axe was the same as the one in the Goblin Champion's hand. There was a rule in this apocalypse that directly taking things from monsters wasn't considered equipment. For example, the axe in its hand would just be an axe with no attributes. Only the equipment that came out of the orbs could be considered a real piece of equipment with attributes. Rupture Battle Axe. Quality, blue. Equipment requirement, strength 30. Physical attack power, 50. Has a certain chance to cause 1.5x crit. Has a certain chance to cause tearing effect. Lu Zhan smiled. He didn't expect it to be a blue piece of equipment with 2 special attributes, and it was considered high gear. However, he wasn't very familiar with this axe. He still preferred to use a sword. As he was struggling, Lu Zhan suddenly saw one next to him, and his eyes suddenly lit up. The equipment requirement was strength 30, with no level or race restrictions. Thereupon, he handed the axe to one. One could naturally use it, but there was no change in attributes. He didn't know if the 3 attributes had any effect on it. Woof, woof, woof. At this time, a pitiful whimper came from the side. It was the big black dog that was making it. This guy looked pitifully at one, and then glanced at the goblin corpses on the ground, as if saying, "Big brother, give me some meat." Lu Zhan had just been deliberately ignoring this big black dog, wanting to see if it would eat this goblin corpse privately. It now seemed that it had really recognized one as its big brother. It was quite interesting. Mutated beasts also had so-called talent distinctions, and this big black dog obviously belonged to the category of excellent talent. If it was cultivated well, it would definitely be a very strong combat force in the future. Thinking of this, Lu Zhan said with a smile, "I'll call you Blackie from now on. I'll give you a leg. Go eat it yourself." He couldn't let this big black dog eat too much. If it evolved too fast and was out of his control, it would be troublesome. As a result, the big black dog didn't move at all, but instead growled at him. Obviously, it only recognized one as its big brother. Not Lu Zhan, the master of its big brother. Lu Zhan was speechless, so he could only let one directly chop off a leg with the axe and throw it to the big black dog. The big black dog immediately wagged its tail and gnawed, and as the leg meat went down, the injuries on this big black dog's body actually began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. The only thing that was hacked in the eye, the scar was never healed. Go, quickly kill all the goblins. Lu Zhan no longer paid attention to it and ordered one. He also wanted to see if this rupture battle axe had any effect on one. 10 minutes ago, at the school gate, in the dark of night, an arrow sparkling with ice crystals cut through the night sky, instantly hitting a goblin captain's chest. A piece of ice crystal immediately spread across the goblin captain's body, firmly freezing it in place. Then, a middle-aged man jumped out of the darkness and punched this goblin captain. Faintly, there was a hint of dragon's roar. Boom! This punch hit the goblin captain firmly. In an instant, the frozen goblin captain was directly shattered into countless pieces. "Uncle Zhang, I've leveled up to level 5. In the darkness, Shun Jialuo walked out and said to the middle-aged man, "Miss, your arrow is really amazing." The middle-aged man called Uncle Zhang said with a smile. If Lu Zhan were here, he would definitely recognize this middle-aged man. He was Zhang Long, the Dragon Heavenly King, one of the 12 Heavenly Kings of his last life. This guy's hidden profession was a dragon blood warrior. He was extremely terrifying in battle and could be called a humanoid Tyrannosaurus Rex. According to legend, this dragon heavenly king was the strongest warrior under the Elf Queen and had been guarding the Elf Queen from beginning to end. Miss, do you want to continue killing? Zhang Long looked at Shan Jialua with a hint of doting and awe. If the Shin family was set up according to those cliché novels, it would be a super family hidden in the dark. Zhang Long was the kind of death warrior that the Shin family had been cultivating since he was a child. There were a full 500 people like him in the entire Shin family. These people's awe of the family had already penetrated deep into their bones, and even now that it was the end of the world, it was impossible for them to betray. Zhang Long's mission as a death warrior was to protect Shan Jialua. When Shan Jialua was just born, this became his only mission. Shan Jialua pondered for a moment and said, Uncle Zhang, let's go to the school. I'm interested in a few people. If possible, I want to absorb them into the family. Lu Zhan's figure couldn't help but appear in her mind. She didn't know what level that guy was now, but he shouldn't be higher than her. Since the end of the world had come, the entire world had to be reorganized. As a family member from a large family, she naturally knew the importance of talent. Lu Zhan's performance was worthy of being a rare talent. Suddenly, Shan Jialua heard a system notification in her mind. Ding! It has been detected that there is an elven curse nearby. If you kill the other party, you will get all the other party's experience points, skill points, gold coins, equipment, and... A smile suddenly appeared on Shan Jialua's face. Let's go, Uncle Zhang. Help me kill someone. Chapter 23. Future Human Emperor? So what? Cafeteria Square. Lu Zhan looked speechless. He originally wanted to see if one could show off the effect of the battle axe. As a result, this guy's attack was too high, and he was killed in one blow, so he couldn't see it at all. On the side, after eating the goblin champion's leg, the big black dog recovered a lot, and immediately cried out and rushed up, wanting to follow his big brother to kill the enemy. As a result, in less than 5 minutes, the remaining goblins were all slaughtered. Lu Zhan, do you still remember me? A student walked over cautiously, looking at Lu Zhan with fear. Lu Hong, what's the matter? Lu Zhan asked. The person who came was his former classmate, and because of his rebirth, several of his classmates who should have died had survived. That can we follow you? Lu Hong looked at Lu Zhan full of hope and asked. At this moment, everyone with eyes could see Lu Zhan's strength. In this apocalypse, he was definitely a rare big shot. Sorry. Lu Zhan shook his head without hesitation. All right. Lu Hong was extremely disappointed, but didn't say anything more. Work hard. Just treat it as a game. Killing monsters and leveling up, it's very simple. Lu Zhan smiled and said, if you die, then die. In this world, it's better to die than not work hard. By the way, remember to pick up a mobile phone and hold it. As soon as the end of the world came, the mobile phone lost any signal and even went black and shut down later on. He couldn't even see the time. It was a waste. Many people had already thrown it away. But when 12 o'clock came, the mobile phone was an essential thing for everyone. As for Lu Zhan himself, he had already picked up the latest Huawei Mate 14 Pro Max with a large screen in the teaching building. He enjoyed watching it. Yeah, I will. Although Lu Hong was confused about what to do with the mobile phone, she still nodded and clenched the weapon in her hand. Ignoring these people, Lu Zhan looked at the corpses all over the ground, and it was time to work. He wanted to try to strengthen one to the champion level. He wondered if these hundreds of corpses were enough. Next, the green color in Lu Zhan's eyes almost didn't stop, constantly resurrecting goblins, first strengthening them into elite undead, and then sacrificing these elite undead to one. One stood in the center of a pile of corpses, without moving. Blackie was bored and fiddled with those goblin corpses with its claws. Without its big brother's permission, it didn't dare to eat, but was quite obedient. Soon, those students had already dispersed, either returning to the cafeteria building to continue hiding, or going to other places to find goblins to kill. Only Lu Zhan was left in the huge square. The night was getting darker and darker, and it was estimated that it wasn't far from 12 o'clock. There was also a hint of anxiety in Lu Zhan's heart. At the moment, he had sacrificed a full 30 elite undead and failed about 10 times. The success rate was still okay, but one still showed no signs of evolving. As soon as 12 o'clock came, powerful monsters would completely invade this world. Even he would have to hide first and see what happened. 1. You have to give me some strength. Zhan sacrificed another elite undead. The success was successful, but it only increased one's strength, physique, and agility by 1 point each. Alas, let's continue. Zhan sighed, and his eyes continued to glow green. Suddenly, a dangerous aura suddenly rose in his heart. Zhan almost subconsciously tilted his head to the right. In an instant, an arrow grazed past his face and disappeared into the vast night. A name immediately appeared in his mind. The elf queen Zhan. As the most popular powerhouse among the future 8 human emperors, there were also the most legends about her. According to legend, her arrows were ever-changing. There were ice-cold ice breath arrows, explosive flame arrows, fatal divine power arrows, and silent shadow arrows. He hadn't noticed that arrow until it was at his head, which was in line with the silent shadow arrow. Fortunately, the 6 points of spirit added had a slight warning effect. Just now, he had sacrificed all the undead to one, and only one undead was providing him with 10% of his physique. If he had been hit by this arrow, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Want my experience? Then it depends on whether you have the ability. A hostile spirit rose in Zhan's heart. The elf queen? What about it? The next second, one undead after another crawled up from the ground, and Zhan's various attributes began to increase wildly. And that wasn't the end. At the same time, he was constantly sacrificing. The 10% skill effect of the chalice ring was to enhance the effect of the sacrifice skill. For example, it originally required sacrificing 20 to strengthen an elite, but now, only 18 were enough. Too bad. This undead resurrection can only be done one by one, otherwise the efficiency would be greatly improved. 3 minutes later. Besides one, there were a full 14 elite undead beside Zhan. However, Zhan still hadn't appeared, and seemed to be waiting for an opportunity to release a fatal blow. On a distant tree, Zhan and Zhanglong hid behind the lush branches. I can't find an opportunity. Zhan put down the arrow in her hand and shook her head. For elves, nighttime vision was no different from daytime vision, and she could clearly see Zhan's every move in the distance. This guy is a bit interesting. He doesn't look like a student, but more like a battle-hardened warrior. He's an expert. Zhanglong said in surprise. Uncle Zhang, can you kill him with certainty? Zhan raised her eyebrows, a little surprised by the evaluation Zhanglong gave. Just a student, how could he become a battle-hardened expert in just one day? Even she didn't think she could do it. And although she didn't know what this guy's profession was, it was obviously a summoning-type mage profession. According to normal logic, the person himself should be very weak. At this moment, Zhan in the distance was full of mystery in her eyes. To be honest, Zhan didn't expect that the person cursed by the elf would be Zhan. Originally in her vision, Zhan was the first object to be wooed and won over. However, at the moment of seeing him, after being stunned, between wooing and killing, she didn't hesitate to choose to kill. There was no way. The system gave too much. The reward for killing was too generous. Although she didn't know Zhan's level, she could tell from the goblins covering the ground that it was definitely not low, and it might even be higher than her. If she could kill him, the experience would at least allow her to level up twice, not to mention that there might be many good things on him. Hee, I don't know, but I want to try. A hint of excitement appeared on Zhanglong's face. That was the excitement of a strong person meeting an opponent. Then go, Uncle Zhang. Zhan said directly, while knocking her bow. As a shooter, it was natural for her not to show up to fight in close combat. Ranged sneak attacks were in line with her positioning. Okay, miss, if I get into danger, run away directly, Zhanglong said, jumping off the tree trunk and tightening his gauntlets. It was a piece of green equipment exchanged from the system store. Zhanglong didn't like to use any weapons. He liked the feeling of punches to the flesh. Chapter 24. Arrows of Mutual Destruction. Zhan looked ahead. There, a man was walking step by step towards him. He had heard of Dragon King and had even seen him from afar, but he had never actually seen his face. So, naturally, he didn't know that the man before him would be one of the future 12 heavenly kings. However, he could sense that this man was not coming with good intentions. Sure enough, the next second, The man was rushing towards them at breakneck speed, like a cannonball, with a powerful stream of air forming around him. Number 1, go. Zhan took a step back, showing no intention of fighting himself. Zhang Long, seeing the tiny goblin charging towards him, didn't take it seriously. Xin Jialua had said that the goblins Zhan revived were slightly stronger than when they were alive. But how much stronger could they be? One punch was all it would take. Zhang Long threw a punch, intending to smash the little goblin into pieces. In an instant, a dragon's roar resounded. Zhan's eyes narrowed, and he instantly understood the man's identity. Dragon Blood Warrior. During battle, they emitted a series of dragon roars. This sound wasn't just for show. It was a sonic attack that could disrupt the mind and affect the enemy's state. He had heard this sound before and was very familiar with it. That's right. The Elf Queen and the Dragon King were inseparable. Interesting. The people trying to kill him were actually a future queen and king. Zhan wasn't afraid. Instead, he felt a surge of excitement. What did this mean? It meant that he, Zhan, was no longer a nobody. The future Dragon King. His level couldn't be higher than his at this moment. Even if he was level 6, his stats would be around 40 at most. But number 1. Although the recent sacrifice hadn't been successful in evolving, it had allowed its stats to break through 50. Moreover, there was the weakening effect of Death Fear and the Valiant Fighter's increasing strength effect. He was confident that number 1 could easily overpower the Dragon King. Up ahead, just as Zhang Long threw his punch, he saw the goblin also raise the axe in its hand and smash it down hard. At that moment, Zhang Long suddenly felt a very uncomfortable sensation. Before he could think, the hairs on his body stood on end for no apparent reason. Almost every cell in his body was releasing a signal. Danger. Without the slightest hesitation, Zhang Long instinctively rolled to the side, dodging the axe's attack in a rather pathetic manner. With a boom, the axe fell heavily, and faint cracks appeared in the ground. Zhang Long was horrified. What the hell was going on? How could a goblin have such powerful attack power? And he could feel his attributes inexplicably decreasing. Even as he was in shock, number 1 had already raised the battle axe again, charging straight at him, faster than before. Retreat, retreat, retreat. Zhang Long pushed off the ground with his legs, and his body flew backward. The battle axe had already smashed down on the spot where he had just been. If he had been a second slower, Zhang Long would have been cleaved in half. Next, the battle axe continued to fall, and Zhang Long could only keep dodging. If he was even a little slow, he would be hit by the axe. Even a Dragon Blood Warrior couldn't withstand the attack of that axe. As for attacking, don't be ridiculous. On a tree trunk in the distance, Xin Jialua was also watching the battlefield with a look of shock. How could that goblin be so strong? And beside Zhan, there were a full 14 goblins. If each one of them was this strong, Xin Jialua almost didn't dare to continue thinking. At this moment, a feeling she had never experienced before arose in her heart. Fear. Awe. Even the outbreak of the apocalypse had only startled her for a moment. But the mysterious man in the distance was truly scaring her. However, she quickly reacted. If this continued, Zhang Long would definitely be hacked to death. Suppressing the fear in her heart, Xin Jialua shot an ice breath arrow from her hand, targeting the goblin. She had to rescue Zhang Long first. As for killing Zhan, she had lost confidence. Clang! Xin Jialua's attack was almost perfectly timed. Just as number 1 was attacking, the ice breath arrow struck number 1's body. Ice crystals emanated from the arrow, freezing number 1 in place. But the next second, number 1 shook its body, and all the ice crystals scattered on the ground. But that instant was enough for Zhang Long to escape several meters. Now, Zhang Long had only one thought: escape. Forget the excitement of meeting an opponent. He couldn't even beat one of their underlings. He was so embarrassed that he could die. In the distance, Zhan sneered. Xin Jialua had indeed made a move. But was she the only one with reinforcements? He glanced at the big black dog beside him. Sure enough, lightning surrounded Bei Laohei's body. Dare to attack its big brother? Then let him taste the taste of lightning. With a boom, a thick bolt of lightning shot out of Bei Laohei's body. Zhang Long, who was desperately escaping, never expected such a freakish thing. By the time his body sent out a danger signal, the lightning had already reached his back. The lightning poured into his body, and Zhang Long's body became a human light bulb. After convulsing for a while, he fell straight to the ground, motionless. After all, he was a dragon blood warrior, so he still had a little bit of life left, but not much. At the moment, Zhang Long was even finding it difficult to move a finger, let alone get up. He never thought that he would die so soon after the apocalypse had started. Zhang Long smiled bitterly. He wasn't afraid of death. After all, he had been raised as a suicide warrior since he was a child. He was just worried about Shanjialua. Miss, you'll have to walk the road ahead yourself. Shanjialua, come out and talk, how about it? Lu Zhan looked into the distance and said loudly. At the same time, Number 1 had grabbed Zhang Long and placed the axe on his neck. With a little force, he could kill him. His eyes were fixed on the front. As long as there was any movement, he would order Number 1 to attack without hesitation. This elf queen was hiding too well. Even after shooting that arrow, he still couldn't find her. In that case, using this dragon blood warrior as a hostage wasn't a bad idea. From that arrow, he could see that this elf queen still cared about Zhang Long. Otherwise, she would have run away long ago. But Lu Zhan waited for a long time and didn't get any response. Could she have really left? Lu Zhan frowned. In that case, just as Lu Zhan was about to tell Number 1 to make a move, Shun Jialua's voice finally came from the distance. Lu Zhan, my hidden profession has a very special skill. It's called arrows of mutual destruction. Once fired, this arrow will follow you relentlessly until death. Of course, firing this arrow will also kill me, so I won't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Let Uncle Zhang go, or I will definitely fire this arrow. As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Zhan's body shook. His mind was warning him that he was being locked on by an extremely dangerous aura. Chapter 25. Leaderboards. Do you think I'll believe that? Lu Zhan narrowed his eyes and said lightly. In his past life, he had never heard of such a thing. With his level, he couldn't access any of the Elf Queen's secrets. Believe it or not, you can try it and find out. Do you dare to try? Her voice came from afar again. The next second, a bolt of lightning shot out of Bei Laohei's body towards the direction of the voice. The night instantly brightened, but there was no sign of Shan Jialua. This guy was really good at hiding. Lu Zhan, next time, I'll fire this arrow without hesitation. Let's all die together. Shun Jialua's voice was full of anger. Damn it, he was being threatened by this woman. Lu Zhan cursed in his heart. She was the one who wanted to kill him, and she had no sense of reason. To be honest, he didn't want to gamble. If there was such a thing as arrows of mutual destruction, exchanging himself for an elf queen and a dragon king would definitely be a huge loss. His life was too precious. But could he just let her go? Could he, Lu Zhan, bear this grievance? For a moment, he was stuck in place. At this moment, Zhang Long also opened his mouth. Little brother, the power of the Shun family is beyond your imagination. If you let us go this time, the Shin family will definitely repay you handsomely. Lu Zhan raised his eyebrows. He didn't know that the Shin family was such a big clan. It seemed that Shun Jialua's ability to become the elf queen had a lot to do with her family. After the apocalypse, although money and status had lost their meaning, some big forces still had unique advantages. They could collect a large amount of resources, intelligence, and talent in the shortest amount of time. Zhang Long's words had a plea, but also a threat. But was the Necromancer afraid of a large number of enemies? What a joke. At this time, Shin Jialua also spoke from afar. How about this? Let's cooperate. I can swear that I will never kill you because of the elf's curse. If you and I cooperate, my family can provide you with resources that you can't even imagine. The apocalypse is full of dangers. You don't know how you'll die on your own. Why not cooperate with me? You can get a lot, even me. Wow, it was a threat and a beauty trap. If it were his past life, countless people would be fighting for this opportunity. But now, he and Shun Jialua had been divided into opposing camps by God. Cooperating with her would be like asking a tiger for its skin. Promises were worthless. She was even using a beauty trap. It seemed that she was unscrupulous in his eyes. How could he trust her? No, he still had to trick her out. So, Lu Zhan said directly, it's not impossible. How about this? You come out, and we sign an agreement or contract or something. Okay, you let Uncle Zhang come over first. You come out first, and I'll let your Uncle Zhang go. You let Uncle Zhang go first, and I'll come out. Cursing mud horse. Are you playing me? Lu Zhan cursed directly. Was this woman playing tug-of-war with him? But just then, an incredibly terrifying aura suddenly rose nearby. Then, a dragon's roar rang out. Lu Zhan's face changed, and he was about to tell number 1 to attack directly. He saw Zhang Long's body break through directly. Countless scales covered his body. His limbs swelled several times. His human head changed, and he looked like a monster. Zhang Long had become a dragon man. This was the Dragon Blood Warrior's talent skill, Dragonization. But this skill had a significant drawback. It required a full 3 minutes of accumulation time, and the aftereffects were huge. Xin Jialuan naturally knew this skill. The conversation just now was just a delay. After becoming a dragon man, Zhang Long's strength skyrocketed. He slapped number 1 several meters away and then grabbed Lu Zhan. However, he underestimated Lu Zhan's strength. The moment the aura rose, Lu Zhan reacted quickly. While retreating quickly, he summoned all the undead. Zhang Long was also taken aback. What kind of class was this? His dragonization time was limited. He couldn't kill everything. Zhang Long made a decision instantly. Escape. After dragonization, all his attributes exploded. He was so fast that he left afterimages in the air. By the time Lu Zhan wanted to have number 1 chase, he was long gone. Cursing mud horse. Lu Zhan said grimly. He was starting to react now. Damn it, he had been played. It was almost 12 o'clock. It would be extremely dangerous to chase. Arrows of mutual destruction and the dragonization skill made him realize he understood too little about the abilities of these top powerhouses. After taking a deep breath, Lu Zhan calmed down and glanced at number 1. Never mind. He would continue to sacrifice to this ancestor. The 14 elite undead that had just been strengthened immediately turned into nutrients and entered number 1's body. The result was that number 1 still didn't evolve after a full 14 elite undead had been sacrificed. Even the 5 sacrifices after that failed. He had run into the legendary bottleneck. Lu Zhan was helpless. He didn't force it anymore and quickly reincarnated and strengthened 14 elite undead to prepare for the arrival of 12 o'clock. A moment later, a voice finally sounded in his mind. Beep, the mobile phone has been modified. Please find the mobile phone and bind it as soon as possible. Here it comes. Without hesitation, Lu Zhan put all 14 elite undead into the undead space, leaving only number 1 outside. There was no way. If he put number 1 and 2, Bei Laohe would rebel on the spot. The big black dog had high potential. Lu Zhan had to coax it away. Then, Lu Zhan ran back to the teaching building as quickly as possible and hid in a classroom. The moment he hid in the classroom, a terrifying roar rang out in the sky. 3 huge flying dragons flew over, flapping their wings. Various strange roars also rang out from the university campus from time to time. The novice village was over, and the real apocalypse had arrived. Humans would have to hide for a long time. Bei Laohe, who was next to him, seemed to sense those terrifying auras. It lay quietly on the ground, not daring to move. Number 1 was riding on Bei Laohe's back, motionless. Leaving those aside, Lu Zhan took out his Mate 14 Pro Max. The phone, which couldn't be turned on, was now emitting a faint light. The following words were displayed on it. Bind phone? Lu Zhan chose to bind it without hesitation. Soon, the phone screen began to change rapidly and 3 apps appeared. Discussion forum, trading house, leaderboards. Without signal or communication, humans were scattered all over the world like sand. And this mobile phone was another benefit that the apocalypse gave to humans. Lu Zhan first clicked on the leaderboards app, and a prompt quickly appeared on the phone. Beep, congratulations on entering the top 100 of the level leaderboard. Please choose to show or hide. Lu Zhan chose to hide it. He was always a low-key person. Soon, the top 100 level leaderboard was displayed on the phone screen. First place, Huang Shengren, level 10. Seeing this name, Lu Zhan's heart jumped. Huang Shengren, the strongest of the 8 emperors, the Saint Magic Emperor. This guy was a saint like his name. The sanctuary he opened sheltered the most humans, and was also the largest force. And his class. It was also a hidden class, and it was an extremely terrifying forbidden magic master. It was rumored that even the most ordinary fireball spell could exert the power of a forbidden spell in the hands of the Saint Magic Emperor, destroying the world. Zhan didn't pick up the mobile phone right away in his past life, so he didn't know that this peerless emperor had already shown such terrifying strength at the beginning of the apocalypse. Level 10. He was a full 3 levels higher than him. Although Zhan spent a lot of time strengthening the undead, he asked himself that even if he kept killing goblins, he couldn't have reached level 10. Forbidden Magic Master, terrifying. Looking down. Second place, Hidden, level 8. Third place, Hidden, level 8. As for Zhan, he was directly ranked 47th. Of course, the initial level ranking didn't mean anything. Take Shun Jialua, for example. If she returned to the so-called big family and got help from her power, she could catch up quickly. There were also some classes that were weak in the early stage, but terrible in the middle and late stages. Closing the leaderboard, Zhan opened the Trading House app. To his surprise, there were already a lot of things on it. However, most of them were casually posted by curious people, such as magic potions, some trash equipment, and no one would buy them. Chapter 26. Pig-Headed Monster. Zhan ignored the trash and directly entered the words, Strengthening Stone. Soon, 5 sales messages were displayed on the screen. In the early stage of the apocalypse, the attribute increase brought by strengthening equipment was dispensable for most people, and it was better to sell it for gold coins. At least with gold coins, they wouldn't have to worry about food, clothing, housing, and transportation. The price of the 5 strengthening stones was not expensive, a total of 800. Zhan swept them all away without hesitation. Then, he entered the word sword, wanting to see if there were any sword weapons with attributes. But the result disappointed him. There were, but they were all whiteboard equipment. But it was better than nothing. It was better to get one now anyway. He had a lot of money now. Zhan directly chose a sword with an attack of plus 30 and bought it. The next second, Zhan's gold coins were reduced by 1,000, and a sword appeared in his hand. Finally, Zhan opened the discussion forum app. In a short period of time, there were already tens of thousands of messages on it. Most of them were SOS messages, and one was very conspicuous. I am Huang Shengren, the first place on the level list. I am currently in Jinghai City and have initially established a relatively safe place. Everyone can come here for help. Zhan remembered that this message was in the most popular spot for a full month, and the number of follow-up posts reached a terrifying 1 million. In the future, the sanctuary built by Huang Shengren was the largest among the 8 emperors, and it sheltered the most humans. And the requirements were low. As long as they had certain combat power, they could go there for shelter. In his past life, Zhan also wanted to go, but it was too far, and he couldn't reach it with his strength. After sighing, Zhan clicked on the local forum. The information displayed on it was all about Donghai City. He wanted to see if there was any news about dungeons. Because of his strength in his previous life, he could get very little information, so he naturally didn't know what dungeons had appeared in this city and where they were. However, after looking around for a long time, he didn't find any useful information, so he could only temporarily close the phone and then use all 5 strengthening stones to strengthen the undead ring. The god of luck favored him again, and all 5 enhancements were successful. Undead ring plus 8. Mana plus 100, spirit plus 3, skill cooldown minus 1.3 seconds. It added a spirit attribute, which was not bad. Looking out the window, a strong Taurus warrior was running past. Zhan didn't plan to continue hunting monsters. Leveling up was important, but combining work and rest was the way to go in the long run. He needed to rest well. There would be a big battle tomorrow. Zhan remembered clearly that a permanent adventure-level dungeon would appear in the Inmao building in Donghai City on the second day of the apocalypse. Permanent dungeons reset everything after completion. Humans can keep going to clear it and keep getting rewards. It can be regarded as a huge treasure given to humans by the apocalypse. The rewards for clearing such a dungeon were different each time, and it all depended on luck. Zhan also cleared it once with a few big guys in his past life. His luck exploded, and the reward was a purple equipment, which was snatched away by the big guys as soon as he left the dungeon. He was a total jiucai. But no matter what the dungeon was, the first clear reward was the most generous, and it was much more generous. So Zhan had to take the first clear of this dungeon. He was an orphan, without parents or siblings. He could say that he had no worries in this world. Strength was his only pursuit, and living was his biggest purpose. A trace of firmness flashed in Lu Zhan's eyes, and he ordered number 1 next to him. Number 1, watch out for the surroundings. Wake me up if there is any movement. Then, he leaned on Bei Laohei's soft fur. The big black dog wanted to resist, but Lu Zhan directly had number 1 glare at it, and it became honest in an instant. Early the next morning, the sky was still dim, and Lu Zhan suddenly opened his eyes while leaning on Bei Laohei. He could feel it. Something was approaching. The next second, a pig-shaped creature that walked upright appeared at the door of the classroom. When the pig-headed monster was surprised to find food, an axe had already smashed down on its head. It was number 1. At the same time, Lu Zhan also rushed out quickly. With the blessing of the goblin warrior leather armor, his agility had broken through 50, and he was as fast as lightning. Just as number 1's axe hit the pig-headed monster's head, Lu Zhan's sword also pierced the opponent's throat at the same time. The pig-headed monster had a high physique. 2 fatal attacks in a row failed to kill it instantly. However, number 1, who had finished the axe, had already raised the battle axe again and smashed it down for the second time. Beep, congratulations on killing the pig-headed monster, gaining 100 experience points and 100 gold coins. Lu Zhan pulled out his sword and stroked the blood on the blade. Everything was so real. He was so afraid that everything yesterday was a dream, and he would return to that weak state after waking up. The facts proved that all this was not a dream. After sighing, just as Lu Zhan was about to transform it into an undead, he suddenly heard Bei Laohei making a ooh sound at the pig-headed monster, drooling. The wound on one of the big black dog's eyes had not healed yet, and it seemed that it was going to be a one-eyed dog. However, the long scar made it more fierce, which didn't match its begging for food. After eating goblins for a day, Bei Laohei was tired of it. Now when he saw the pork, how could he not be greedy? If number 1 hadn't nodded, he would have been a Gerhu Pusur. Lu Zhan smiled and said, "For the sake of you being a pillow for a night, I'll give it to you." Anyway, there were many monsters of this level outside. After speaking, he saw number 1 raising the pig-headed monster's body and throwing it directly in front of Bei Laohei. Bei Laohei was authorized by the boss and began to devour it. Taking advantage of this effort, Lu Zhan walked out of the classroom and looked around. Although a night had passed, he could still see many monsters searching for humans everywhere. Lu Zhan roughly looked around. Now there were roughly 3 monster races on the campus: goblins, pig-headed monsters, and Taurus warriors. Those who are not of my race must have different hearts. There were countless races of alien monsters. Goblins could be regarded as the weakest race among the monsters. These different races often fought for food. Someone had analyzed in his previous life. In fact, the so-called apocalypse. It was more like a great war in which all races took the earth as a battlefield. It was a war of all races. It wasn't as simple as the 2 forces of humans and monsters. In just 3 minutes, the pig-headed monster had been eaten by Bei Laohei. He saw Bei Laohei surrounded by silk and lightning, and he looked like he was charging. "Let's go." Lu Zhan looked at the lone Taurus warrior in the distance and said, it was time to change his undead. His goal was the Taurus warrior. Among the 3 races on the campus, the Taurus warrior was undoubtedly the strongest. The dungeon had not been opened yet, and even if it was opened, no one could clear it in a short time. Lu Zhan didn't need to rush for a while. He could make all preparations before leaving. On the campus path, a Taurus warrior carried his axe, his eyes widened like copper bells. It had been a whole night. He didn't catch a human food. Just when he was about to go crazy, a bolt of lightning suddenly fell from the sky. In the doo-doo-doo sound, the Taurus warrior trembled and couldn't move. The next moment, a sword light flashed and pierced its throat. An axe was directly cut into his head. In a daze, the Taurus warrior could only see a human food standing in front of it. Then, his eyes glowed green. Chapter 27. Inmao Building. Little Bowl Number 1. Lu Zhan named the newly transformed undead Taurus warrior casually, then looked at its attributes. Undead Taurus warrior. Characteristic: undead. Strength: 40. Constitution: 35. Agility: 33. Good heavens! The 10% amplification of the Holy Grail Ring plus the 10% of the talent made the attributes of the transformed Taurus warrior ridiculously strong. It was much stronger than that elite undead goblin. Keep in mind that this was just an ordinary undead. If it was strengthened into an elite, it would be heaven-defying, and that would feed back to him. In a maximum state, 14 elite undead Taurus warriors, plus number 1. Wouldn't Lu Zhan's strength be able to break 100 directly? Just thinking about it made him excited. Lu Zhan collected the undead Taurus warrior into the undead space and waved his hand. Let's go kill bulls. A moment later, Lu Zhan arrived at the canteen building. There were few goblin corpses left outside. Those pig-headed monsters and Taurus warriors weren't picky eaters. When they couldn't eat humans, eating goblins would fill their stomachs. Not far away, 5 Taurus warriors were gnawing on corpses. It was naturally impossible to instantly kill 5 Taurus warriors. Lu Zhan wasn't polite. He summoned all the undead, adhering to the Necromancer's consistent combat principle of overwhelming numbers. He quickly solved these Taurus warriors, and his Taurus undead also came to 6. However, compared to goblins, the number of Taurus and pig heads was much smaller, which made Lu Zhan quite unhappy. He couldn't experience the joy of constant reincarnation and sacrifice. Half an hour later, Lu Zhan, who had been all over most of the campus, had finally gathered 14 undead Taurus warriors. It seemed impossible to sacrifice them all into elites in a short time. Lu Zhan didn't force it and directly took out his phone, opened the forum, and looked at it. There was still no dungeon information. Obviously, most people understood the value of dungeons and wouldn't easily post it on the forum. In that case, there was no need to waste time. He would go directly to Inmao building. Lu Zhan directly flipped over and got on the dog, riding on Bei Laohei's body. The big black dog had a long back, and there was no problem for Lu Zhan and number 1 to sit down. This guy had helplessly accepted the fact that Lu Zhan was the boss of its boss, so he didn't resist. Anyway, it was fine as long as he could eat. Then, silks of electric light appeared on Bei Laohei's 4 feet, and he jumped up, already 5 meters away. This big black dog not only had high talent, but his head was also flexible. He even knew how to use lightning to enhance his speed. Although the apocalypse had completely broken out, all the alien monsters wouldn't arrive all at once. Lu Zhan remembered very clearly that monsters above the brave grade would only descend after 3 months. Otherwise, as long as a royal goblin came now, it could flatten the entire earth. And powerful races such as magic dragons would often occupy a large area as their territory. As the upper monster races, they didn't need to go out to find food themselves. They only needed to stay in their territory, and the lower races would naturally offer them tribute. The reason why Lu Zhan didn't go out all night yesterday was to wait for those powerful races to divide the territory. It should be divided almost now, and in his memory, Donghai City wasn't favored by those powerful races. So Lu Zhan didn't need to be too careful. With his current strength, even if he encountered a brave grade Taurus race, he could run away if he couldn't beat it. Bei Laohei was speeding all the way. At full speed, he was probably comparable to a sports car. Even with Lu Zhan and number 1, the speed was not less than 100 yards. In addition to no obstruction, it only took 10 minutes to reach the outer square of Inmao building. Lu Zhan didn't rush in directly, but had Bei Laohei climb to the top of a tall building not far away. Compared to the school, it was obviously more chaotic and dangerous here. It was safe to observe first. Lu Zhan now had excellent vision. Even standing on the top of the building, he could clearly see everything on the square. A melee was taking place there. A dozen humans were guarding the entrance of the building, and a large number of monsters were constantly rushing in. There were too many monsters, and obviously, the human side was in imminent danger. There may be hundreds or thousands of humans in the building. If the monsters rushed in, it would definitely be a feast. Lu Zhan didn't go down right away, but looked carefully. Taurus, pig-headed monster, dog-headed man, and even only because race monsters. Zhu is a Chinese internet meme referencing a chicken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 elite grades. No brave grade. No big deal. With number 1, if the battle time is long enough, even if the brave grade comes, it can be killed. The main thing is that if these monsters aren't cleaned up, they can't enter the building. The entrance to the dungeon is in the building. The tall building was dozens of meters away from the building. It was impossible to jump over it just by jumping. Chapter 28. The Savior has arrived. Inmao building. Damn it. dare to be wild on human territory, go to hell for me." A muscle man roared and threw the axe in his hand. The axe spun out like a boomerang and chopped all the surrounding monsters, and finally flew back into the muscle man's hand. This move seemed very mighty, but it failed to kill a monster. There was no way. The muscle man was only level 5. It was okay to kill goblins, but these Taurus and pig heads were too thick, and he couldn't kill them at all. Seeing this scene, the muscle man couldn't help shouting, "Teacher Lu, we can't hold on anymore. Let everyone inside come out to fight. If this continues, everyone will not survive." "Yes, why can they hide inside and we have to work hard here?" Lu Yong frowned and said angrily, "How do I teach you normally? With great power comes great responsibility." At the same time, the giant sword in his hand directly slashed towards a monster that's a Jiinju. Jijiji. The monster screamed and died. This person was the sports teacher of Donghai University, Lu Yong. After being enlightened by Lu Zhan, he rescued students in the entire dormitory while teaching students to kill goblins. He quickly cleaned up all the goblins in the 2 dormitory buildings. It also allowed him to take out several students with good strength to form a team to protect those students with little combat power. Then, with the lofty ideal of saving more humans, Lu Yong took 4 strong students to form the Doomsday Savior team. It happened that the mobile phone was successfully updated at that time. Lu Yong opened the forum and saw a lot of SOS information, all from email building. Obviously, a lot of people were hiding here. There was no need to think about it. After resting for one night, the Savior team set off immediately and came to email building. When he arrived, a few monsters happened to want to rush into the building. Without saying a word, they started fighting directly. At the beginning, they could hold on, but as the battle progressed, more and more monsters gathered, so that it came to the present. They could barely guard the door. "Damn it, I thought I was Spider-Man. What the hell is great power, great responsibility? I won't accompany you to die. I'll take a step first. I'm leaving too, a few of you. Although I admire your courage, I don't want to die. Let's go, let's go. Let those people inside ask for more blessings. We are not saviors." Lu Yong had only 6 people, and the other few were strangers. They didn't have such noble qualities. Fighting here was purely for killing monsters and leveling up. Now it was getting more and more dangerous, so naturally they had to retreat first. Anyway, with their strength, even if the monsters rushed into the building, the chance of survival was still very high. And as these people left, the pressure on Lu Yong and others increased sharply. Seeing that they were about to not be able to defend, Lu Yong also shouted, "Withdraw into the building first." Although he was a holy mother, it was not time to dedicate his life yet. He still had to keep his useful body to save more people. Just then, Lu Yong suddenly saw a green monster in the distance waving a giant axe, splitting a pig-headed monster in half. He was shocked and then ecstatic. "Everyone hold on, the savior is here." How could he not recognize that figure? Although he changed his weapon, the familiar green body and the powerful strength, wasn't it Lu Zhan's goblin? Lu Zhan saved him in the last crisis, which was equivalent to saving everyone in the dormitory. And this time, Lu Zhan appeared again in a time of crisis, which was equivalent to saving everyone in this building. Wasn't this the savior? Savior. Several students heard Lu Yong's words and were shocked. Although Teacher Lu was a little scarily holy, it was precisely because of this that he would never joke about such life and death matters. He said the savior was coming. That was really the savior coming. Although they were also very curious about who could be the savior. And in the next second, lightning suddenly flashed in the distance, and a wolf-like creature jumped over like a thunder god descended into the world. Wherever he went, the monsters trembled and were numb. It was even full of burnt aroma, and several of them were even cooked. Woof! Bei Laohe landed steadily in front of Lu Yong and the others, and roared at the monsters, showing his domineering style. It was just that the sound was a little weak. After all, it was just a dog barking. Is this the savior? A dog? No. Is it a thunder dog? Damn it, what is this? It can also generate electricity. So scary. Several students stood on the spot. After all, animals were weaker than humans, and very few could evolve into alien beasts. This was the first time they had seen an alien beast. Even Lu Yong was a little confused. Where was Lu Zhan? But he wasn't surprised by the thunder dog. It should be Lu Zhan's new pet. He was just a little envious. It was so mighty and domineering. Teacher Lu, why are you here? At this time, a figure jumped off the back of the thunder dog and said with a smile. Lu Zhan really didn't expect Lu Yong to be here. He was too far away just now, and he couldn't see his face clearly in the battle. It wasn't until just now that he saw that the other party was Lu Yong. Lu Zhan, haha, I knew it was you. Lu Yong said excitedly. Let's solve these things first. Teacher Lu, follow me. Let's go kill the elite monsters first. As he spoke, Lu Zhan summoned 14 undead Taurus warriors again and asked them to hold on to the position at the door. As for number 1, he was killing happily in front. The reason why he let number 1 shoot first was to let him enter the state of valiant fighter as soon as possible. After speaking, Lu Zhan jumped back on Bei Laohei's back again and rushed to the nearest Taurus berserker with his sword. Okay. Lu Yong was not polite and knew that the other party was going to take him to level up, so he quickly followed, leaving several students looking at each other. In front of them, a dozen undead Taurus were attacking their former companions frantically. This scene was too strange. Damn it, which one should we attack? I can't tell, they all look the same. Look at the eyes, our teammates' eyes are glowing green. What kind of teammates? Are you calling these things teammates? Forget it, let's take a break. My mana is almost exhausted. Taurus Berserker had a tongue more than ordinary Taurus, but its combat power was several times stronger. But the weakness of this monster was also obvious. Lu Zhan patted the dog's head below and said directly, Bei Laohei, electrify it. Bei Laohei grunted to express his dissatisfaction, but thinking that his big brother could only work obediently, he released the lightning. Zhu zhu zhu. The Taurus Berserker was washed by lightning and was not injured, but he was successfully angered and roared and rushed over here. Number 1, come back? With the blessing of lightning, Bei Laohei was faster than Lu Zhan, so avoiding the Taurus Berserker's attack was no problem. Lu Yong, who was behind him, was in danger. Going deep into the monster group, he would be chopped into meat if he was not careful. Since Lu Zhan was going to take him to level up, he couldn't just watch the other party being chopped to death, so he called number 1 back and fought beside Lu Yong, which could be considered as protecting him. As for number 1, Valiant Fighter had taken effect, so Lu Zhan didn't need to worry about his safety at all, so he just let him go. Chapter 29, Killing Elites. The Taurus Berserker raised its axe and chased relentlessly, while Bei Laohei charged left and right through the monster crowd, occasionally turning around to shock him with electricity, so agile. A moment later, the Taurus Berserker roared to the sky, as if an invisible flame was burning all over his body, his momentum soaring. Lu Zhan's expression shook. Berserk. This was the Taurus Berserker's special skill. Teacher Lu, get out of the way quickly. Lu Zhan quickly reminded Lu Yong, who was still picking up scraps next to number 1. Moo. The Berserker Taurus was like a mad cow, directly indiscriminate between friend and foe, charging wildly, seemingly only seeing the big black dog in its eyes, roaring and rushing up. The speed was more than twice as fast as before. Bei Laohei, you can't run past this old cow, right? Lu Zhan patted the dog's head and said, Woof. Bei Laohei heard the words, barked, and it seemed that thunderclouds had gathered above his feet, and he rushed out like lightning. Competing for speed? What was there to fear for his thunder dog? Damn, this is so exciting. Lu Zhan, sitting on Bei Laohei's back, grabbed the dog's fur tightly, and if he was a little careless, he would be thrown out directly. Behind, the Berserk Taurus waved its axe wildly. There was no longer any kind in its eyes, and it directly killed several Taurus warriors. But in terms of speed, it really couldn't catch up with Bei Laohei, who was covered with thunderclouds, following behind like a mad bull, but couldn't hit it. Bei Laohei, go over there. Lu Zhan spoke with difficulty, grabbing the dog's head and changing direction. Woof, woof, woof. Bei Laohei jumped and barked, as if saying that it was not a bicycle. But in the end, it still rushed over according to Lu Zhan's instructions. Over there, a pig-headed monster in armor was carrying a steel knife, as if nothing had happened. This guy was the elite pig-headed monster, more armored than the ordinary ones, and his defense was even more amazing. The intelligence of these low-level monsters was limited, and they had their own set of rules of conduct. For example, they would not take action until the minions were dead. So as long as Lu Zhan didn't actively provoke them, he wouldn't be besieged by a group of elite monsters. But now, Lu Zhan was going to provoke this armored pig-headed monster. Bei Laohe rushed straight to the armored pig-headed monster, and just when it was about to hit, it suddenly jumped up and jumped over its head. However, the berserk Taurus chasing behind did not react so quickly and slammed the axe on the armored pig-headed monster. Humph! The attack of the berserk Taurus was ridiculously high, and an axe directly cut a crack in the pig's armor. The armored pig-headed monster screamed and was also furious, and slashed the mad Taurus with a horizontal knife. The two elite monsters fought together instantly. This was exactly Lu Zhan's plan. First, anger the Taurus berserker, let it berserk, and then lead it to the armored pig-headed monster. The information of these low-level monsters will be available everywhere in the future, but it is extremely precious now. Lu Zhan, who had mastered this information, was like cheating, and could easily formulate a killing plan targeting the weaknesses of these monsters. Okay, stop running and go back quickly. Lu Zhan patted the dog's head and said. He couldn't let go of the experience of these two elite monsters. Woof woof woof. Bei Laohe barked, and Lu Zhan accurately captured the meaning of the other party. I want to eat beef after killing. No, I want to transform these two elite monsters into undead. Lu Zhan said directly. Look over there. There is a raging Jiyin, I tell you. The meat of Jiyin is very tender, more delicious than beef. Woof woof woof. Really? Would I lie to you? Woof woof woof. Yes? What are you barking? Let you go over and do it quickly. Seeing that the battle between one pig and one cow was about to be won, Lu Zhan quickly urged. Bei Laohe could only succumb to the silver power. In front, no matter how high the armored pig-headed monster's defense was, it could not withstand the berserk Taurus, and the armor all over his body had been cut to pieces, and the pig's blood was flowing all over the ground. However, this guy was tough, and he was far from dead. On the other hand, the Taurus berserker still looked mighty, but he was far from death. For such a perverted skill like berserk, the side effects were terrible. In addition to the loss of mind, it was also in a state of extreme weakness after the berserk ended. At present, the berserk state of this Taurus was almost over. Sure enough, as soon as Bei Laohe arrived, the Taurus berserker slumped as if his tail had been docked and suddenly collapsed. Even the axe could not be lifted and fell to the ground. Humph! The armored pig-headed monster raised its big knife and made a strange cry, seemingly mocking this dead Taurus. As a result, just when its big knife was about to be cut down, a bolt of lightning directly fell from the sky and penetrated its body, making it numb on the spot. And in front, a figure appeared, stabbing the extremely weak Taurus several times in a row, each sword hitting the point. In less than 3 seconds, the Taurus berserker's life had already been woo. Beep, congratulations on killing the Taurus berserker, gaining 400 experience points and 400 gold coins. Beep, congratulations on leveling up to level 8. Finally leveled up. Lu Zhan looked excited and looked at the corpse of the Taurus berserker, and only an evolution stone was exploded, so stingy. Picking up the evolution stone, Lu Zhan's eyes flashed green. Get up, my little Taurus. The Taurus berserker, who had been dead, opened his eyes sharply and stood up straight. After being undead, its weak state naturally disappeared, but its strength doubled instead, and it was even comparable to the berserk state. He raised his axe and slashed at the armored pig-headed monster who had just recovered. Lu Zhan was not idle either, and also stabbed the pig head with a sword. This pig head had already been cut by most of the blood, and under the attack of one person and one undead, it only persisted for more than 10 seconds before falling to the ground. Lu Zhan's eyes lit up. It turned out to be equipment, and the style was the armor on the other party's body. Picking it up casually, he activated the undead reincarnation again and reincarnated the pig head as an undead. The attributes of these two elite undead were not low. With the blessing of a full 17 undead, Lu Zhan's strength and physique attributes all broke through 60. He only felt full of power, and a stab with the long sword in his hand had already penetrated the head of a Taurus warrior and killed him instantly. However, at this time, a burst of screams suddenly came from not far away. Lu Zhan looked towards the voice and saw an extremely shocking scene. Number 1 was chasing the raging Jiyin to Khan. Beside him, Lu Yong was also very witty, and from time to time he would make a sword to mix a little experience value. The most important thing was that the ground in that area was full of corpses of monsters, and their deaths were quite miserable. Damn, how many monsters did Number 1 kill without his attention? And now he was able to chase after elite monsters. You must know that Jianzhu was not a trash-like goblin, and Number 1 was only an elite level. Woof woof woof. Bei Laohe barked, looking smug. His big brother was so powerful, and he was also very proud as a younger brother. Chapter 30, 5-person team. Forget it, let's take a good rest. There is no necromancer who has to go into battle himself. Lu Zhan smiled bitterly and directly put away the sword and walked towards the entrance of the building. As for the rest of the monsters, he would leave them all to Number 1 to perform. At the entrance of the building, several students saw Lu Zhan coming over and took a few steps back, with a look of awe. This was the savior in their teacher Lu's mouth, Tu Mengla. However, looking at the way he dressed, he seemed to be their classmate again, which made several people full of reverie. 5 minutes later, the raging Jiyin suddenly opened its mouth and spewed out a raging fire, hitting Number 1. However, the next second, Number 1 walked out of the fire, like a god of death, and cut off the Jiyin's head with an axe. Beep, congratulations on killing the raging Jiyin, gaining 400 experience points and 400 gold coins. Lu Zhan's eyes lit up as if something had exploded again, and walked over to pick it up. It turned out to be a stone. Raging whetstone can be used to enchant weapons so that they have burning damage. This was a good thing. Lu Zhan's eyes lit up even more. This kind of enchanted burning damage looked ordinary, and it really had no damage at the beginning. But this special attribute could continue to grow with strengthening. Imagine burning to 100 damage. It was not impossible to burn a dragon to death. It was a pity that he didn't have a good weapon now. The sword in his hand was too trash, and a fool would enchant it. Number 1's battle axe was okay. But did he have to spend a lot of strengthening stones to strengthen it after enchanting it? Wasn't it too extravagant? Struggling, Lu Zhan could only put away the stone first, and then took the corpse of this raging Jiyin back and threw it to Bei Laohe's mouth. Since he had promised this big black dog, he couldn't break his promise. Bei Laohe's only remaining eye released an excited light and began to gnaw. The surrounding students trembled. It was so cruel to feed pets with elite monsters. Was this still human? In front, Number 1 had once again opened the mode of killing. At this time, almost no monster could stop it, and the real god of death had arrived. Lu Yong was also very witty. Anyway, these monsters would eventually be killed by Number 1. So he simply attacked everywhere, adopting a method of even distribution of rain and dew. As long as there was damage, he could get experience at that time. Although it was less, the advantage was that there were many. You guys, aren't you going to get some? Lu Zhan glanced at a few people next to him and said. These guys did not run away just now, but stayed to fight with Lu Yong, which was not bad. Thank you. Thank you. Several people had been looking at it for a long time, and as soon as Lu Zhan opened his mouth, they immediately rushed out like they didn't want to die. Number 1 killed too fast, and if they didn't hurry up, they wouldn't get anything. Just then, a large group of people rushed out of the building, holding weapons and wanting to rush out to kill the monsters. As a result, before they reached the door, a ferocious dog was already standing at the door, with thunder and lightning all over his body. A group of people were naturally startled and dared not continue to step forward. If you want to hide, just hide properly, don't roll out. Lu Zhan stood next to Bei Laohe and said with a sneer, hiding when it was dangerous, and now that it was safe, they came out to get experience? Where did their faces come from? Why don't you let us out? Get out of the way. What are you? I'm going to sue you for illegal detention. I'm a lawyer, and I solemnly warn you now that you are committing a crime. I am Lu Jingming's son. Do you dare to stop me? Friend, I'll give you 10 million. How about selling me this dog? Lu Zhan laughed. Some people still couldn't figure out the situation even after the doomsday had passed for a day. Couldn't figure out the new rules of this world. The strong are king. So, Lu Zhan didn't mind teaching them. So, he patted Bei Laohe on the shoulder. The next second, a bolt of lightning suddenly shot out from Bei Laohe's body. The people standing in the front, the ones who were shouting the hardest, didn't even react and were struck by lightning and directly turned into coke after screaming. This surprised everyone and showed a look of horror. When I kill all the monsters outside, you can go wherever you want. Now, all of you get back. Zhan was too lazy to talk nonsense with these people and said directly. Among these people, there were many former top rich people and superiors. They had never suffered such anger, but looking at the few pieces of coal that had already lost their breath in front, they could only silently retreat. Just as Zhan was about to turn around, he suddenly stabbed his sword to the side. He only heard a clang sound. A figure appeared from the air, and the dagger in his hand happened to resist Zhan's sword. His face was full of horror, not knowing why the other party could find his existence. I've killed the elf thieves? A normal thief like you dares to show off stealth in front of me? Zhan sneered and exerted his force suddenly. The thief flew out directly, spitting out a mouthful of blood. In the crowd, a woman raised the staff in her hand and waved it casually. She saw a ray of light descend on the thief's head. In an instant, the thief's original pale face was directly rosy. Then, 3 more figures walked out of the crowd and stood with the thief. The materials in this Inmao building were extremely abundant, and there were not only some ordinary people hiding inside, but many strong people were also resting here or looking for materials. Obviously, this was a 5-person team, and the configuration was quite reasonable. Thief, priest, shield warrior, and 2 marksmen. Although there was no hidden class, in the early stage of the Doomsday, the combination of 2 marksmen was quite violent. Among the 5, the thief entered stealth again. Waiting for an opportunity to move, the 2 marksmen raised the guns in their hands and aimed at Zhan, and the shield warrior raised the shield in his hand, seemingly guarding against the big black dog's attack. The priest hid behind the shield warrior. Without speaking, the 5 had entered a state of combat. As for the others, they also entered a state of watching the show, wanting to see how these 5 killed the big dog. As a result, in the next second, a Taurus warrior walked in from the door, followed by the second, the third. A moment later, at the entire entrance, a full 16 monsters stood in front of Zhan, all with green eyes, terrifyingly. Zhan called in all the undead, and as for the outside, it was enough to leave number 1 alone. And he himself rode on Bei Laohei's back, looking at the wary 5 people with a smile, as if asking, "Are you sure you want to fight?" In the air, the thief showed his figure again. Damn it, there were so many monsters around. He couldn't get close at all, and stealth couldn't penetrate objects. And with this lineup, going up was purely an act of giving away heads, and he had made up his mind that if they really fought later, he would retreat directly. As for teammates, who cares? The shield warrior was obviously the leader of the group, and directly put away the shield, and immediately put on a change face magic, saying with a face of righteousness, "Friends, everyone is human. We shouldn't kill each other. Our enemy is those monsters outside." At the same time, his heart was crazy. What kind of monster class was this? Was it cheating? Destroying the balance? If there was a reporting function, he would report it hundreds or thousands of times.